as being
Hello. Okay, so there's been lots of stupid shit coming out from all kinds of things. And like honestly, I mean, if people want to jump on and talk about it, we can. The Hey, on God. I have to say, I am sorry you were threatened on my channel. That's not acceptable behavior. I'm glad he apologized later, but yeah, that's not acceptable behavior. Regardless, Calvin Robinson, honestly, on this video, he especially towards the end, he said something which kind of like was like, oh, okay, he's not an idiot and he's not a complete hypocrite, whereas Joel Webben, frankly, is just Joel Webben is just, I mean, the guy is a snake. And if nothing else proves, I mean, you can watch the entire interview yourself. Honestly, it was just so disgusting. It's not worth, a lot of this stuff is just not worth replying to. These are the types of things that I truly have to say. I will let God decide between you and me, and may God have more mercy on your soul than you deserve, because it seems to me it's not much. But I just had to play these two clips.
That said, there's much of the New Testament that I do read as being all Scripture. I always tell my parishioners this: all Scripture is for us, but not all Scripture is to us. And what I mean by that is that, you know, the human authors, inspired by the Holy Spirit, had a direct human contextual audience that they're writing to. And so the book of Romans, I would date the writing around.
So he's not even talking about the Torah and Tanakh. He's talking about the Christian Bible, right? And he's saying it's all to us, but it's not for us. Do you hear him? Do you understand what this man is saying? He's talking about the Christian Bible. The Christian Bible. Right? Like, you know that trick that Christians play with the Old Testament, right? He's playing that trick with, and frankly, I mean, Christians play this trick with the Gospels as well. But now he's applying it to the letter of the Romans by Paul of Tarsus. Okay? Do you understand what this man is, who this man is? Like, this is a supposedly sola scriptura Christian, right? And he's explaining to you why the Bible doesn't apply to you. If you cannot see the man for the snake in the garden that he is, I don't know what to tell you. I honestly do not know what to tell you. Now, as far as Calvin Robinson, this was emblematic of how I felt he was on here. Like, if you want to have this discussion, why don't you have this discussion with someone who, I don't know, even James White or Doug Wilson? They would have come on to the channel with you, or there's been the back and forth with the guys from the Babylon Bee or the Daily Wire. Why are you having it with Joel Webbin? Well, for the same reason that I think he asks Grok about the Talmud. Listen to this. Oh, sorry. Sorry.
Is a reaction to Jesus, isn't it? It's a rejection and a reaction. I did a search on, I asked Google, what does the Talmud teach about?
He asked Google. Well, if you asked Google
Jesus, and Google AI said there's no overview for this.
Well, if Google AI doesn't have an overview for it, we should be very suspicious.
And I was like, okay, alarm bells started ringing.
Alarm bells.
I asked Grok, and Grok said in Sanhedrin 107b describes Jesus as an idolater. Rabbi Joshua Ben and Parachia says through his narrative of what am I saying here?
I don't know what you're saying, because what you're about to say now is a hallucination.
Speaks of a post-mortem of punishment for Jesus placed in boiling excrement.
That's not Rabbi Yehoshua ben Parachia in Sanhedrin 107b. We can go through Sanhedrin 107b and we can talk about the hallucination. But what do you expect when you ask effing an LLM that's trained on the internet? Do you understand how LLMs work? No, apparently you do not. So I did a little comparison here. Here is Grok, and I asked Grok, what does the Gospel of John say about the Jews? In several instances, John portrays the Jews as opponents of Jesus. This includes narratives where they challenge Jesus, plot against him, and ultimately play a role in his crucifixion. For example, John 8:44 has Jesus saying to certain Jews who were challenging him, "You are of your father, the devil, and your will is to do your father's desires." This has historically been seen as an anti-Semitic context, though been used, in anti-Semitic context, though scholars argue its original intent was more about theological disagreement rather than a racial or ethnic condemnation. So should I ask Grok what the Gospel of John says about the Jews? Is that how you want to do this? I decided to pull up some quotes from Jesus. Thought he might be relevant here, but of course, I realize that all Scripture is for us, but not all Scripture is to us. Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, the hour is coming when you will neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We know what we worship, for salvation is of the Jews." Another bit of John I like to quote to Christians a lot. "Do not think that I shall accuse you to the Father. There is one who accuses you, Moses, in whom you trust. For if you believed Moses, you would believe me, for he wrote about me. But if you do not believe his writings, how will you believe my words?" And I say that again and again to Christians. If you do not believe Jesus, Moses, how will you believe Jesus? And obviously, most Christians could care less about Moses. Matthew 23, then Jesus spoke to the multitudes and to his disciples, saying, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit in Moses' seat. Therefore, whatever they tell you to observe, that observe and do, but do not do according to their works, for they say and do not do. But he says they sit in the seat of Moses. So again, probably more scripture that is for us, but not to us, or to us and not for us. However, Christians like to explain away their supposed own scriptures. But one of my favorites, which I point a lot here, is the Jerusalem Decree, the letter which the first church council, this is after the crucifixion and the resurrection and the annunciation and the denunciation and the ascension and the this and the Pentecost and that and the other thing, right? It says Moses is preached every week in the synagogues. Oh, well, let me find Moses. Verse 21. For Moses has had throughout many generations those who preach him in every city, being read in the synagogues every Sabbath. I have to ask you, if you go to a church where they don't preach Moses every Sabbath, what are you doing? What are you doing? Okay, that's the verses I wanted to go through. Let's see what people have to say. Yeah, that particular thing was on the Lotus Eaters broadcast on the Lotus Eaters. In addition to, I guess now Calvin Robinson has his own thing, Bros with Froze. Okay. Robinson seems to be good on some topics, but completely ignorant on others. I mean, he's a smart guy. See my long-running series, Why is Protestant Theology So Bad? And it's invariably because when you have one person trying to understand everything without actually relying on anyone else to have an institution, to have distributed cognition, to take expertise, that's just going to be the case of it. Sounds like a person or something. Yeah. Exactly. Problem is that he has a large platform and should be more informed on these topics. I mean, if he's going to discuss it, at the very least, please, for the love of God, like, talk to somebody other than like doing a Grok search. Really? Is Bart Ehrman's New Testament historical scholarship reliable in your assessment? I mean, somewhat, yeah. I mean, I think of him. He is a prominent like scholar, so yeah. I mean, he knows more than I do. Oral tradition strikes again. Not sure what you mean. I don't think his statement is incorrect at all. No real conflict. Clearly, he's not sola scriptura in that way. I wonder if Calvin Robinson knows who Tovia Singer is. No clue. Even if it's true, trash talk is everywhere, so discovering trash talk is not news. Okay. First Ecumenical Council. Father Stephen, being a Christian isn't like being a woman. Just identifying as one doesn't make you one. I have to say, as Jan God puts it, No, the true Scotsman knows, Father Stephen, when and if you take over Christianity, I don't know what to tell you, but for thousands of years we've been dealing with these types of people. The fact is, when it comes down to it, Joel Webbon and like Calvin Robinson, there's a lot of things they said which needed to be addressed, right? And I think this is part of the huge problem that we've had over the past I don't know how many years, where Christians have been trying to right their ship. Joel Webbon has been able to notice and ask questions, right? And talk about historical Christianity, because like this discussion is not being had, and it needs to be had. And I'm fine with people having the discussion. I want people to listen to what Joel Webbon says and what Calvin Robinson says, and deal with the stuff that is within Christianity. But the reason I can say Jesus hates Christianity is when you look at the history of Christianity, you see what Christianity has done and what Christianity has been, right? The Christian church, if it's going to actually repent of its sins, which I hope it does, starting with the Trinity, like it's going to have to look at its history and recognize that the Jesus they've supposedly been worshiping for the past 2,000 years is not the certainly the Jesus of the Gospels, I would say, and certainly not the Jesus of history. The Christian church, huh? Yeah. Look, I love you, Father Stephen, but let's put our cards on the table. I don't recall, like, I don't know, which patriarchate would you like to say has an unbroken history of actually acting according to a lot of the things we've discussed. I like. Do you really want to discuss John Chrysostom's homilies? We can. He's a saint, right? Like, what do you do with that? I don't have to repent of some kind of collective guilt for stuff Protestants and Franks do. Okay, let's talk about John Chrysostom. Okay, I mean, if you want to. I usually try to be nice and not bring up John Chrysostom too much and explain him away. Thoughts on begetting versus creation versus procession versus emanation in the context of God. Yes, I have a very important thought, which is, if it doesn't say it in the Bible, it's a really bad idea to talk about God definitively in ways that the Bible itself does not talk about God. Like, so actually recently I was talking to Justin from Archangels, and we were rehashing my first discussion with Father Stephen, where didn't you say that journal article got stolen or shelved somehow, and you can't? I thought you brought up that journal article. So I was talking to Justin, and brought up So there's the hymn Yigdal, which is based on the 13 Principles of Jewish Faith, which is the best definition of Jewish beliefs that we have that is kind of sort of extra biblical. And so Justin was trying to write something up, and he was like, well, this is the definitive belief, right? And it was like, you know, to the degree that we have so it hasn't been published. I don't know what to tell you, Father Stephen. To the degree that we have anything definitive, it's the closest thing to definitive, but the specific part he was talking about, which is God has no body, right? The Ravid disagrees vehemently with him, right? And he was also a Rishon, right? And so, like, so I've said this many times, the two parts of the Christian Bible that I read with my mouth open were Mark 12 and Acts 5. And in Acts 5, I'm like, what have we been arguing with for 2,000 years? Because Gamliel there, and from everything I've never heard a rabbi say, yeah, that's not something Gamliel would say. It's like he puts out the Jewish understanding, like, right there. It's like, don't find yourself on the wrong side of God, right? And it seems to me that the history of the entirety of the church, sorry, Father Stephen, has been finding themselves on the wrong side of God. Jacob, what in your assessment is the best evidence or logical argumentation based on evidence that the God described by Judaism exists? The Kuzari and the teleological. So my basic, what I say is, I don't make arguments. I tell people, look, pray to God, say, God, if you are real, please let me know, and do that sincerely. And I personally believe that the God of the Hebrew Bible will let you know. And if he doesn't let you know, I don't know what to say about that. Like, just seriously, just honestly, just pray to God. Be like, God, please, I want to know if you exist. Please show me the right way. Like, tell me the truth. Like, just say that, okay? And then follow the truth. And if you have no evidence, if nothing happens, then okay, like that's how you have to live. I mean, that's all I see to it. Like, your relationship to God is like right there. So what can I tell you? Like, if God wants a relationship with you and you reach out to him, I believe Karov Hashem l'chol korav kol asher yikrahu be'emet. God is close to all who call upon him, all who call on him truly. Like, if you call on him truly, I believe he will answer you. And if he doesn't, I don't know what to say to you. Like, there's nothing I can say. I thought the Khazar, no, he's not talking about the Khazar hypothesis. He's talking about the Kuzari. Completely other thing, Jan God. Stop spending so much time on 4chan. It's not good for you. As one of my rabbis once said, some people could use a good, decent brainwashing. Their brains are filthy. You're one of those guys. Jesus wrecked my life in the best way possible. Okay, I'm glad for you. I don't know what to say. Jacob, while I am not somebody who believes fideism is completely wrong, faith itself without evidence will be a laughingstock to most educated atheists. I'm not a fideist. I believe that you should seek evidence. And I can't think of a better way of seeking evidence than like being like, hey, God, here I am. Turns out the Mormons were right. I am completely doubtful of that. Jacob is right. You can't logic yourself using citations into a correct belief. That logic is essentially St. John Chrysostom thought Christians should celebrate the Passover at church, ergo the Spanish Inquisition, no difference. No, I mean, like, I haven't actually read his things through, but here we go. John Chrysostom. I mean, John Chrysostom on the Jews. The Tertullian Project. John Chrysostom against the Jews. Here we go. You asked for it. You asked for it. Homily 1. Today I had intended to complete my discussion on the topic on which I spoke to you a few days ago. I wish to present you with even clearer proofs that God's nature is more than our minds can grasp. Hey, that much I like. Last Sunday I spoke on this at great length, and I brought forward as my witness Isaiah, David, and Paul. Well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad. For it was Isaiah who exclaimed, "Who shall declare his generation?" David knew God was beyond his comprehension, and so he gave thanks to him and said, "I will praise you, for you are fearfully magnified. Wonderful are your works." And again, it was David who said, "The knowledge of you is too wonderful, must be with 2 O's, for me, a height to which my mind cannot attain." Paul did not search and pry into God's very essence, but only into his providence. I should say rather that he looked only on the small portion of divine providence which God had made manifest when he called the Gentiles. And Paul saw this small part as a vast and incomprehensible sea when he exclaimed, "Oh, the depth of the riches and of the wisdom and of the knowledge of God, how incomprehensible are his judgments and how unsearchable his ways." This sounds pretty good so far. These 3 witnesses gave us proof enough, but I was not satisfied with prophets, nor did I settle for apostles. I mounted to the heavens and gave you as proof the chorus of angels as they sang, "Glory to God in the highest, and on the earth peace, good will among men." Again, you heard the seraphim as they shuddered and cried out in astonishment, "Holy, holy, holy, the Lord God of hosts, all the earth is filled with his glory." And I gave you also the cherubim who exclaimed, "Blessed be his glory in his dwelling." So there were 3 witnesses on earth and 3 in heaven who made it clear that God's glory cannot be approached. For the rest, the proof was beyond dispute. There was great applause. The audience warmed with enthusiasm. You assembly came aflame. I did rejoice at this. Yet my joy was not because praise was coming to me, but because glory was coming to my master. For that applause and praise showed the love you have for God in your souls. Seems pretty good so far. If a servant loves his master and he hears someone speak in praise of that master, his heart comes aflame with a love for him who speaks. This is because the servant loves his master. You acted just that way when I spoke. By the abundance of your applause, you showed clearly your abundant love for the master. And so I wanted again today to engage in that contest. For if the enemies of the truth never have enough of blaspheming our benefactor, we must be all the more tireless in praising the God of all. But what am I to do? Another very serious illness calls for any cure my words can bring, an illness which can become implanted in the body of the church. We must first root this ailment out and then take thought for matters outside. And we must first cure our own and then be concerned for others who are strangers. What is this disease? The festivals of the pitiful and miserable Jews are soon to march upon us, one after the other, and in quick succession. The festival of trumpets, the feast of tabernacles, the fasts. There are many in our ranks who say they think as we do. Yet some of these are going to watch the festivals and other things, and others will join the Jews in keeping their feasts and observing their fasts. I wish to drive this perverse custom from the church right now. My homilies against the Anomians can be put off to another time, and the postponement would cause no harm. But now that the Jewish festivals are close by and at their very door, if I should fail to cure those who are sick with the Judaizing disease, I am afraid that because of their ill-suited association and deep ignorance, some Christians may partake in the Jews' transgressions. Once they have done so, I fear my homilies on these transgressions will be in vain. For if they hear no word from me today, they will then join the Jews in their fasts. Once they have committed this sin, it will be useless for me to apply the remedy. And so it is that I hasten to anticipate this danger and prevent it. This is what physicians do. They first check the diseases which are most urgent and acute, but the danger from this sickness is very closely related to the danger of the other, since the Anomians' impiety is akin to that of the Jews. My present conflict is akin to the former one. And there is a kingship because of the Jews, and the Anomians make the same accusation. And what charges do the Jews make? That he called God his own father, and so made himself equal to God. Okay, I don't even understand. The Anomians also make this charge. I should not say they make this a charge. They even blot out the phrase equal to God and what it connotes. Well, at least they make some sense. By their resolve to reject it, even if they do not physically erase it. But do not be surprised that I call the Jews pitiable. They really are pitiable and miserable. When so many blessings from heaven came into their hands, thank God, they thrust them aside and were at great pains to reject them. The morning sun of justice arose for them, but they thrust aside its rays and still sit in darkness. We who were nurtured by darkness drew to the light to ourselves and were freed from the gloom of their error. They were the branches of that holy root, but those branches were broken. We had no share in the root, but we did reap the fruit of godliness. From their childhood they read the prophets, but they crucified him whom the prophets had foretold. We did not hear the divine prophecies, but we did worship of him whom they prophesied. And so they are pitiful because they rejected the blessings which were sent to them, while others seized hold of these blessings and drew them to themselves. Although those Jews have been called to the adoption of sons, they fell to kinship with dogs. We who were dogs received the strength through God's grace to put aside the irrational nature which was ours and to rise to the honor of sons. How do I prove this? Christ said it is no fair to take the children's bread and to cast it to the dogs. Christ was speaking to the Canaanite woman when he called the Jews children and the Gentiles dogs. But see how thereafter the order was changed about. They became dogs and we became the children. Paul said of the Jews, beware of the dogs, beware of the evil workers, beware of the mutilation. Hello, David. How you doing?
Hello, Jacob. How are you?
Good.
I have a question. I was
have
watching.
an answer.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I've been going through Jeremiah, just getting to the end of Jeremiah right now.
How dare you? Jeremiah is one of our prophets.
I know. I take, and on Shabbos as well. I was listening to Jeremiah, your prophet on your day. Oh,
How dare you?
Yes. So going through Jeremiah, and
Yes.
this is a question that I was wondering,
Okay.
just because of how you structured what you're calling this. How
Jesus
does
hates
Hashem-
Christianity.
No, how does Hashem hate Judaism? Because
Okay. So you're making the argument the prophets of Israel criticized Israel. Therefore, if Christians criticize Israel, it's the same thing. But it's not. There is a fundamental difference.
I just wanted to leave there, just be like, oh, okay. Acceptable. Yeah.
There is a fundamental difference. I mean, so imagine if you are chastising your son, right? And somebody walks up and says, yeah, and smacks him.
Yeah.
That is the way Christians. So the Jewish
that
Bible
occurs
is filled with criticism, and criticism of your own is fundamentally different from going around talking about how evil someone else is.
Yeah.
And so it's as Risto says, the sermon was not to Jews, right? So the entire thing is an absolute non-starter. It's not Christians, and frankly, I have to say, like, when I thought of Christianity, like, I don't do these streams about Hinduism. I don't even do them about Islam. I do them about Christianity because I know that the Christians who come and listen to me believe in my Bible. Right?
Right.
And in a sense, I view them as being part of my community, and I want them to see what the Bible they say they believe actually says, right? Whereas this is not how Christians have been looking towards Jews in their criticism. It's been as the Pharisee, thank God I am not like those sinners. Which it's so hilarious to me every time Christians talk about like that Pharisee and thank God I'm not like that sinner. It's like, well, this is all of Christianity for the past 2,000 years. Thank God I am not like those Jews.
Yeah. So that was not actually the point that I was making, but I liked the way you were engaging. So I was just like, you know what, let him
okay,
do
well,
his
that's the point you were making.
That's fine.
Hello, Father Stephen.
Hello.
I obviously know how to bait you.
There's a joke there, but I won't say it because we're live.
Oh, that's good. I knew what joke you were making. That's good.
Yeah, but so even as you're reading that, right?
Yes.
Like, that's not anti-Semitism. It's anti-Judaism. But he's talking to Christians and telling Christians, come celebrate the feast with us.
Father Stephen, the idea that the thing is, I mean, I don't even like the way he's like, his understanding of Jesus is not my understanding of Jesus. I don't understand Jesus to be talking to that Canaanite woman like, oh, you know, the Gentiles are dogs and God doesn't care about them, right?
That's not the end of the story.
I haven't. Well,
she responds to him and says, "Yes, but even the dogs get the crumbs that fall from the master's table."
And
so he heals her and commends her great faith. Right?
Yeah. Yes, but that's not the story that I'm seeing John Chrysostom as he's explaining it here. That there is this And Joel Webbin actually in that video, which I don't recommend you listen to it because you'll probably find it more disgusting than I do.
Probably.
But
I just don't like getting lumped in with these people. I mean, like, if I started doing this to you, if I started like finding the wackiest Reformed Jews I could, saying Moses never existed, and throwing clips of them up and saying, "See, Jews don't even believe Moses existed anymore." Right? That's what it would be like.
I completely hear you. I completely hear you. That is a fair objection to make.
Well, and sorry, this is part of what I was bringing up originally, Jacob, is the first time I was reading through Isaiah, I was just like, this book is a little bit anti-Semitic, isn't it? Like, I kind of felt it.
Look, there is a qualitative difference between talking to someone, with someone, and bringing up their sins, and then, but this view of God didn't love, and it's funny, Webbin, like, he brings up Romans, right? And he brings up this idea that a lot of Christians have these days, which is that they're kind of grafted in, they're adopted, and the Jews are the natural sons. And he says that doesn't apply anymore because he's a partial preterist and he believes all of that was fulfilled in the year 70, etc. Right? Yeah. He says a lot of things.
Let's be very clear, Jacob.
Yeah.
Most Christians don't think about the Jews at all.
Your Bible is filled with, no, I'm sorry. Like, the Jews show up in the Christian Bible all over it, especially the Gospel of John. So no, most Christians, like, I have encountered Christians who, like, they see a Jew and it's like, oh my God, it's a Jew. Like, that happens. And Philosemitism is actually something I've had to kind of combat, because Philosemitism, unfortunately, will inevitably lead to anti-Semitism. When you stop seeing Jews as human beings and you end up seeing them as some sort of biblical object, and fetishizing Jews, you will end up with anti-Semitism eventually.
Yeah, that's well, I was going to say a lot of Jewish people don't understand that, but I think they fully understand that. They just don't care. Like, I think the Israeli government knows that Mike Huckabee thinks Jesus is going to come back and murder them all, but they don't think that's true, so they don't care and they'll take the money, right? Like,
that's part of it. There's also a thing of there's also a thing of well, we certainly prefer the Philosemites to the anti-Semites, and we don't know who the anti-Semites are going to be, right? And as long as someone's being very Philosemitic, at least we can just be like, okay, at least he's not going to stab us in the back, hopefully, anytime soon. I mean, I understand, and it's a real discussion, right? The people who prefer the Philosemites just don't believe that there's anything other than Philosemites and anti-Semites. They imagine those are the only two natural states of
that
certainly
sector of
Christians.
Evangelicalism. Yeah, is absolutely that way.
Yeah,
and I do again want to make sure that we ground it not just in the New Testament but also in the Old Testament. If you are reading the prophetic literature outside of the larger biblical context, it is not difficult to come away with that with an anti-Semitic perspective. It's not difficult.
If you are being supposedly sola scriptura, and like, this is the thing, like, the Bible talks a lot about Israel, and if you're the type of person who looks at your Bible and then looks at your map, you see Israel on the map. you see the word Israel in your Bible, you make it one-to-one connection, right? There's going to be some sort of problem there. And I totally agree. You should not make, like, this is my whole thing, like, not my whole thing for reason for disliking disliking Zionism, but like a major part of my my no Zionism, right, is I really dislike this religious significance attached to the modern state of Israel, right?
Right.
So yeah, and
which Jacob is coming back to my original point, because within the Hebrew Bible, it is showing that the reason why Israel is in exile is because they're in rebellion towards their God.
But okay, but the people who equate the modern state of Israel with biblical Israel are the ones who are like, oh, so the exile's over.
Right.
So
now I do have to
I
do have to say, that's true of evangelicalism. The backbone of my parish are Palestinian and Lebanese Christians.
Mm. How do they feel about the Syria situation?
You would think if not good. If you think if anybody was going to go around ranting about the Jews, it would be them. And that's not the case. Now, if you ask them about the Israeli government, they have strong opinions, obviously. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But they are very able to separate. I've only got one guy who shows up and once in a while starts ranting about the Jews, but he also thinks the moon landing is fake and that they drink adrenochrome at Bohemian Grove. So, I mean, he's just kind of an all-around kind of conspiracy guy. So, I mean, I don't know if I would even chalk that up to anti-Semitism or just, you can't have a good conspiracy theory without the Jews being there somewhere, right?
Could you convince him that only the Jews walked on the moon?
Yeah.
I don't know what that would accomplish. No, it was clearly the Edomites. They went to Chemosh, their god.
But for the most part, right, they understand, they have a very sensible attitude towards Muslims too. There's not, this sort of weird.
You would be surprised the discussions I've had with Christians some Christians, including Eastern Orthodox Christians, trying to calm them down about their Muslim hatred. Like recently,
are they Russians or are these converts? I'm talking about people from. I'm just talking about people from Lebanon and from.
Well, I mean,
all of this is very difficult because we can all agree that all foreigners are racist. That has been my experience.
Okay,
and so I really do mean that. Anyone I know who was not born in North America has almost entertaining stereotypes.
So on my Discord, we were actually discussing this exact thing, and I said the funny thing with Americans is our racists here in America are so clueless as to what racism really is like that
and how silly it can be.
That they just would not imagine in Iran, my grandfather, Faturecci means sells cloth. He had a clothing store, right? Cloth store, not a clothing store. He sold cloth, right?
Fabric.
And he had to hire a Muslim to serve the tea because if a Jew touched the tea, people wouldn't drink it, right? And it's our modern day, an American anti-Semite, they're not actually they're not gonna come into a store and not drink the tea because a Jew touched it. It's they don't even have a concept of being that racist.
I know a lot of Dutch people who wouldn't drink tea if a Frisian touched it.
Really?
Yes.
I can believe it. Yeah.
Still?
Yes. Ask Dobie Vanderklay about it. He'll agree. He knows some of those people too. My dad. I can barely think of a time where he said something racist that wasn't against another white person. Like, I know every ethnic slur for a European country other than the Netherlands.
My friend is Romanian.
Like,
I got a buddy who's Romanian, and anything his parents wanted to justify, they would bring the gypsies into it. So he wanted to sleep, like his friend invited him over to a sleepover, and his parents said, only gypsies sleep at other people's houses. Like, that was the explanation as to why they disapproved.
I see my dad was far more diverse. My dad told me all about limeys.
Oh, it's very important.
And mix and frogs and like I honestly I went to college in Texas when I was 16, and I asked somebody where his family was from, and he said he was white, and I was confused.
Right.
Like, I literally didn't understand. Like, but where's your family from? Like, England, Scotland, France, what? You know?
Yeah. Well, okay, so Father Stephen, just because I think that this one's particularly entertaining, and I had already told Jacob, I dated a girl, and her dad was a pastor at a Middle Eastern Baptist church. And he told me that the word, do you know the etymology of the word jewelry? Because he had a theory. Could you guess what his theory as to where the term jewel came from?
Was it in the hoard? I thought the hoard was just gold.
I wouldn't actually be surprised if that actually was etymology. I have to look up the etymology of jewel. Oh, apparently I already did look it up. Yeah.
Because I told you this story before.
You did. Yes, you did.
And because I'm, I don't know how obvious it is over the internet, I am khaki in appearance. Middle Eastern people just love telling me all their racist stuff because they're like, he gets it, he understands, he's off-white. We can tell him our fun anti-Semitic theories, like within 5 minutes of knowing me.
There was a student at St. Tikhon's who was from Mexico City who all the Syrians thought was Syrian, like swore up and down.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hey, if we're going there, if we're going to anti-Semitic family traditions, I gotta tell you, this is something nobody Vanderklay may not tell you, but Dutch people notoriously stingy and cheap, right? And I live up to this fully, right?
Yeah. It's going Dutch. Going Dutch is the expression.
Yes, that's where that comes from. Yes.
Yeah, when you won't pay for someone else's food.
Yes, right. So this is a thing, but if you get a Dutch person who will admit it to you, at least going back a generation or two, there was someone in the family who was especially good with money. And this person was referred to with affection as the family Jew.
That's
so I always thought this is this anti-Semitic or Philosemitic? I feel like it's an anti-Semitic stereotype.
Yeah.
And then they're looking at it.
Nixon
positively.
used to call Kissinger. Kissinger was called "my little Jew boy" by Nixon. It was something like that. He's like, "My little Jew boy." Like, he just.
Kissinger had a lot more than that coming. If that's the worst he got, to be responsible for a couple genocides, then he got off light.
I want to say one that's like,
which had nothing to do with him being Jewish. Let me be clear. It was just because he was Henry Kissinger.
Do I say this? I think I'm going to say something just because I was so entertained by it, and I'm not being racist when I say it, so I don't care. This older woman at one of the theaters that I was working with, she was like, she's 74, about that. And she was talking about a play that she watched, and she just wanted to describe a black woman and described her as a Negro woman, paused, realized it was the wrong thing to say, and then said, "Sorry, negress." because
hey, that used to be a polite word.
Yes.
Term.
It's always sad when you see someone trying really hard and still.
Yeah. And I came across something like that where they used the term Jewess, like a Jewess, not a Jewish woman. Loved it.
Yeah, that used to be like Jewess used to be a perfectly okay term to use.
50 years ago, first season of Saturday Night Live, they did a fake commercial for Jewess jeans with Gilda Radner in it, where they had like on the pocket of the jean, the stitching, the embroidered stitching was like a Star of David, like on the.
There was this great SNL skit where Santa Claus is sick. So who takes over for Santa Claus on Christmas is Hanukkah Harry. And it's like Harry. He has multiple donkeys pulling like a rickshaw on Heuschel, on Moischel, on Shlomo. And like the gifts are Hanukkah gifts. So the one kid opens up his present like so excited and just goes, "But I didn't want pants, but you need pants." It's like just the whole thing about Hanukkah gifts not being as fun. On some days you just get socks.
So Vanderkly, basically almost all of his family were killed in the Holocaust. His great grandfather married a Christian, and so they were the Gentiles in the family. So yeah, he has the last name was at one point a Jewish last name. Yeah.
But to tie this to the other discussion,
yes.
Have you heard Slavoj Žižek recently on why he opposes Zionism?
No. Why does he oppose Zionism?
It's going to be funny, whatever it is.
No, it's because he said, look at European and North American, right? Look at the culture. Mm-hmm. How much of that culture comes from the Jewish communities in these countries? And if the ethno-nationalists get their way, mm-hmm. and we just send all the Jewish people off to a Jewish country, that would impoverish all of the other nations of the world culturally.
It's true. Who would make our bagels and do our stand-up? Well,
that's what got me to there talking around. It was like SNL. Like, how many people were Jewish on the first season of SNL? Like,
right.
And the writers and the, you know what I mean? Like, but comedy always comes from marginalized communities. That's why it was like the Jewish community and the Black community.
I don't think it's just that, though. It's a praising of cleverness within, I think, particularly Yiddish. Well, not just like if you look at the story, someone had a little bit of anti-Semitism in a Bible study that I was leading, and they just couldn't get over the Jacob and Laban relationship, because every tricky thing that Jacob or Laban did, they just went, these are Jewish heroes, obviously. Like, this is like, that's the way that the guy saw it. Is
Laban is a Jewish hero?
No, but it's the tricks that they play on each other back and forth. He just went, this is Jewish scripture. This is obviously, the text is very interested in this and upholding the cleverness of certain characters. Even if they're bad, they are clever. And I do think that there might be something to actually upholding cleverness, intelligence.
I don't know. Sounds a bit sugar to me.
It's like not every single culture actually values cleverness. Even if that, like in those stories, they kind of overstep into trickery, obviously, where you get the notion of like being shifty. But there is something about like dissecting law, understanding technicalities. Those are all very important things that come out in humor. Like, humor is understanding those things.
But the trickery thing in the Torah this is an ancient Near Eastern thing.
Right.
Where when you have people who don't have access to sort of the levers of power,
right,
trickery becomes their main option to get justice.
Yeah.
So like you look at Judah and Tamar.
Yeah.
Right. You have a story where Tamar like poses as a cultic prostitute and gets impregnated by her father-in-law. And the end of the story is Judah saying, no, she is the righteous one.
Yeah. She's great. I love that story.
But it's because that was the way she had available to her to get justice. She was due a son from Judah.
Yeah.
Right. And his sons, and she got that. And so right.
I completely agree. But then a Middle Eastern guy used that as an anti-Semitic trope and he said, like we were talking about culture, and he said, this is why the Jews all become lawyers, so that they can control the laws.
Then how do you explain the Jesuits?
It's like, well, and the
They're
Jesuits are all Jews. Well,
there are
don't spend enough time on the internet.
That the Jesuits are all.
Yeah, that's we got a
Black Hebrew Israelites. The Hebrew Israelites, the Black Hebrew Israelites, all think the Jesuits are Jews.
But they don't think they're Jews.
Conspiracy. No. So, no. The fake kind that they're against.
They think they're the other kind of Jews. Yeah.
Have you seen this book, Not Out of Africa? I still haven't read it, but it is detailing the crazy Africana studies stuff that flies in like serious colleges.
Never go full Hotep.
Yeah. Although I have to say, Hotep Jesus is kind of hilarious. I like him.
I want a good bean pie, I guess you could go full Hotep.
I'm not sure you Hotep Jesus. He has a show. He's
no, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I kind of like him. Yeah.
Just so people know, Jews are allowed to become Freemasons, and Freemasons I would identify as like an interesting Christian cult, but they're open to anyone who's a deist.
So when
I don't know the answer
if they're deists.
Sorry,
this is that whole definition of Christian thing again.
Yeah.
When
are the Orthodox allowed to become Masons?
No.
Okay, I didn't think so. They're not allowed to if you're Catholic.
You're not allowed to if you're CRC either.
No, that was one of the main reasons the CRC split from the RCA.
One of them had too many funny handshakes.
The RCA had been around since the 17th century in New Amsterdam, and so they had acculturated and they had a bunch of Freemasons.
When I was a teenager, I kept on hearing how the Masons rule the world. And it seemed a lot to me to be just as crazy as anti-Semitism, to be like, these people rule the world, yet not want to join. So I went and I joined. I was very disappointed. They don't rule the world.
Look, as a Jew, you should have already known what.
You should have already ruled the world.
Yeah, you were already in charge. That's why you were like, oh, no. You know. Whose job is the king supposed to take, Jacob?
What do you mean?
Well, if you're already on top, how do you get on top?
Well, I mean, I knew that the Jews don't rule the world, so I thought maybe the Masons did.
Yeah, no.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
A Jew rules the world. At least one of them does.
I think remember
Father Stephen and I both agree on that.
That my grandfather would ask what a Shriner was during a parade. Said, drunk Mason. I told that to a Shriner I met. He was like, yeah, that's true. That's
That is absolutely true. That's real funny. I really like, and some Judaizing goes through this. I really like the period of time, just what is produced out of it, known as Orientalism, where like I grew up across from Detroit, and they built the Fox Theater.
As is
It's just like yeah. The theater is supposed to look like a sultan's tent, just because everyone was like obsessed with anything they identified as Eastern. It didn't matter what it was. They're like they didn't understand what India, what any, like, they didn't know what countries were and what cultures were. They just liked certain aesthetics. So they'll just be like a Chinese woman in the Middle East, and like they'll just do all kinds of stuff that they're just like, look at how cool this is.
Yeah, if you've ever been to Hearst Castle, like there's a lot of stuff that looks quasi-Arabic, but it's not even close. Like, yeah.
But a lot of the Mason stuff comes out of that, where it's like they are obsessed with giving a sense of it feeling old by saying, oh, it comes from well, I mean, this always happened. Everyone would say stuff came from Egypt or it came from a Jew somewhere in order to say that an idea was ancient. Where they'd be like, yes, we found it in Egypt.
I met a trader in the desert sands.
Yes. But then like in the even all the way into like the 1960s, you still had like increase in things like the Shriners because of this, where they're like, oh, look, we're going to wear fezzes, right? Like the idea that old English people, when they smoked, would just wear a fez, or like a fartouche or whatever. It's like, why?
I mean, now we're getting into the whole LDS thing, because like it's a whole religion based on this idea that like it's all ancient and none of it is. Yeah. So,
and a lot of it's stolen from Freemasonry.
Yeah. So, Father Stephen, you were going to tell us about your article about John Chrysostom homilies.
Back to that. Well, yeah, no, I mean, that's what you usually get, and I'm glad you didn't do, is people will just look up like, find me the worst quotes from, and like that are out of context, and say, see, aha, he says something negative about Jews, therefore anti-Semitism. But you have to put it in the context of, this is a Christian talking to other Christians, right? And what occasions it, as you read, is the fact that in Antioch, where he's preaching this, so Antioch at its founding was 1/3 Jewish, 1/3 native Syrian, and 1/3 Greek. So the Jewish district after AD 70, the Jewish district in Antioch was the largest Jewish population in the world. And by St. John's time had been there for 600 years. To give you an idea of how important it was at the time, the Romans, after they destroyed the temple, took the cherubim from the temple and put them on display in Antioch as a warning, because they didn't want the Jewish community in Antioch to revolt. Right? Because of the size of power at that time. It's now we're another 300 years in. Meanwhile, Christianity at this point, we're in the late 4th century. So Christianity has been like a legal religion for less than 100 years. And Christian traditions about celebrating feasts are just now coalescing. And St. John Chrysostom has a huge portion of his people who, rather than coming and celebrating Pascha at the church, are going over and celebrating Passover at the synagogue. And so he preaches this series of sermons to say, no, you guys need to come and celebrate these things here at the church. Right?
I mean, I've heard your description, but like, what's wrong with Christians going to a synagogue?
Instead of church? Would you want that today?
Well, that's kind of what I've kind of been trying.
If half of Joel Osteen's church came into your synagogue on one of the Jewish feast days,
I have been trying to convince the Jewish community that if
that would be okay.
Christians want to come to synagogue, we should actually be accommodating. That's been right.
But you acknowledge that that's not the case today. They would freak out today if that happened.
They would definitely freak out.
Hundreds of Christian goyim just showed up on a feast day and say, "Hey, we're here to celebrate the Feast of Trumpets with you."
Especially if we send the charismatics. Let's send them first. Right. My friend said he could speak Hebrew. Like, there are people who speak in tongues and believe that they can speak Hebrew as a result of it. I just love it.
But
no, they really can't.
Yeah. And I know, like, pitiful has a different connotation now than originally. Right? But what the text is saying, the attitude St. John is saying they should have toward the Jewish people is one of pity, not one of anger, not one of hatred, right? Because he's trying to say, y'all were a bunch of ignorant, right? Goyim, right? You've now come to know God through Christ, right? They don't have Jesus as the Messiah, so you should feel bad for them. And you should want them to come to know Jesus. That's what he's saying to them. That's what he's saying. They're in a position like you were before, where they're ignorant now.
Well, I mean,
because they had the chance to accept Jesus as their Messiah, and they rejected him as their Messiah. The they being the people still going to the synagogue at Antioch, not the people in his church.
Okay, so right. this again, it goes back to how he's understanding. And I have to say, this is one of my major faults with Paul, is his understanding of God's relationship with the Gentiles, right, is very different from a Jewish understanding of how God views the Gentiles. Like, if he saw, even, I mean, I would disagree with a reversal that, like, now the Jews are as the Gentiles and the Gentiles are as the Jews. I categorically reject that as wrong. But if their view of what it means to be a Jew and a Gentile was more similar to a Jewish view, right, where we don't believe that, like, all the Gentiles are going to hell.
St. John didn't believe that.
What?
St. John Chrysostom didn't believe that. He doesn't say anything there about anybody going to hell. He isn't sitting there saying to these Christians, "Oh, by the way, all of your great-grandparents are in hell." He's not saying that to them. He's not an evangelical. He's not an evangelical. He never says that. I have put out this challenge, Jacob. I've put out this challenge for years now.
Yeah.
Publicly, on the internet, in person, for anyone to show me anywhere in any church father where they say Christians go to heaven and non-Christians go to hell. No one has ever come up with a single quote. I've said this in front of Ortho Bros. I've said this in front of Protestants, evangelicals, Roman Catholics. No one has come up with a single example from the church fathers where they say Christians go to heaven and non-Christians go to hell.
When
they're over and over again is the church fathers warning Christians that they're liable to go to hell if they don't get their act together.
What could
am
be
I misquoting you?
Those who provoke God not only by transgressing the law, but also by keeping it. I have trouble with this. Theologically.
Okay,
like,
what do you understand that he's saying there?
What?
What do you understand that he's saying there?
He's saying that attempting to keep the law is a provocation to God.
No, that's not what he's saying. Notice the uncircumcised in heart. He's saying that by outwardly keeping the law and not inwardly keeping the law, that is worse. To be circumcised in the flesh and not in the heart is worse,
but
worse
also
than being uncircumcised.
By wishing to observe it at the wrong time.
Yeah, that's not what it actually says. It says that not observe it in it's more in the wrong way. But yeah.
I don't even know what the original was.
In Greek.
I'm reading
my article. I went through. I went through the Greek.
I'm just reading. Yeah. I'm just reading.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, I certainly like your translations of everything better than every other Christian's translations of everything.
No, the point he's trying to make is that it is worse, right? It would be better to be uncircumcised than to be circumcised in the flesh and not in your heart. Right? He's saying being outwardly religious and not truly religious is worse than just not being religious.
It's almost as though, Jacob,
I'm not sure I would agree.
There is this idea that
well, you might disagree, but I'm just clarifying what he's saying.
I don't know it. Jacob, I think, kind of agrees within his own personal life. Like you've kind of talked about the difficulty of being Jewish, where you've said if you could have been born a Gentile, that would have been better. Right?
Well, because of the lifestyle I lead, yeah, I don't actually keep Jewish law like I should.
And like the quote you read,
yeah,
from him where he said, "Beware the dogs," from St. Paul in Galatians, he's talking there about the people who wanted the dogs. He's talking about there are the people who wanted the Gentiles to be circumcised and to convert to Judaism and come under the whole law.
See, I don't know enough Greek to actually dig into this.
Yeah, but so that's what my article is. It's definitely. I mean, he definitely considers Christianity to be superior to Judaism. He wants Jewish people to become Christians. He wants Christian people to stay Christians and not become Jews.
And he wants Jews who become Christians no longer to keep the feasts, apparently.
Well, he wants them to keep the feasts with the church. Yes. He wants them to keep the feasts with the church.
But the church isn't keeping the feasts. That's the problem.
Well, no, we would say we are. This is like the other thing you read the other day when I was on, where they were where the same Greek word was being translated. With Constantine, the same Greek word was being translated sometimes as Passover and sometimes as Easter.
Right.
When it's the exact same Greek word.
Yeah.
Right. So the debate is not, do you celebrate Passover or do you celebrate Easter? The debate is, do you celebrate Pascha at the Jewish synagogue or do you celebrate Pascha at the Christian church?
Yeah.
Which meant waiting till Sunday. Right, effectively. Yeah. Because the dating method was virtually identical at the time. Right.
Well,
and
I mean, Nicaea,
Feast of Trumpets, we have the indiction on September 1st.
I was reading about Nicaea, but Nicaea deliberately decides not to have Easter on the same day as the Jews. Why? Or do you not believe that's true?
There's two pieces to that. Well, okay. One, it's always celebrated on Sunday. That was the main decision they made.
Okay.
Because there were three groups.
All right.
There were three groups before Nicaea. There were groups who were celebrating the resurrection of Jesus. Right? We'll just use for the sake of art. Celebrating the resurrection of Jesus on March 25th every year, which was the date it happened. Right? So they're doing it like day and date, right? Without any reference to Passover at all. Right?
Okay.
There were people who were celebrating it on the day of the Jewish Passover, whenever that fell in the week.
Mm.
And there were people doing it on the Sunday after the Jewish Passover, effectively.
Mm.
And so the group that won was that decided was the one that was doing it on the Sunday after, the Lord's Day after.
Is
then
that
the
also
second piece was
to...
they said, we're not going to like consult with the rabbis every year using their new moon charts and tables. We're going to use the ones in Alexandria. Right.
Is this at all related?
The Bishop of Rome hasn't done for many centuries now, but the decision of Nicaea was we're going to use the ones in Alexandria that had the best observatories at the time. We're going to use their new moon calculations and do it the Sunday after based on that. But it almost always falls the Sunday after the Jewish Passover every year.
Is this also related to the idea that because Passover is also the beginning of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, where it would be celebrated for a week, and depending on the rabbinic opinion, they would say that there were different days that were appropriate for you to have, like if someone was unclean for the first of the days of unleavened bread, that there was other ways that things could be celebrated within that week. So I wonder if that had an effect where this is
there probably was some of that. And there is a Christian Holy Week that forms.
That's right. That's right.
Leading up to it. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Pesach Sheni, second Passover, is in the Bible.
Yes. Yeah.
But we, since we don't have ritual purity anymore, we don't since the destruction of the temple, that hasn't been operative.
Yeah, but there is, what was I looking at? Because there's certain things about celebrating the Feast of Unleavened Bread, like the week-long feast, in what ways that could be honored throughout the week. So I believe there's no way I'm going to find it right now in the middle of this conversation.
Now, one thing I don't
Father
know
Stephen,
is how Passover is dated in modern times. Are there new moon charts, or how far do they go back? Have they ever been updated?
So
how can you tell which grain is ripe? Because that's also important. You gotta pinch or something.
So believe it or not, the crazy thing is the Talmud is very, very insistent that what's referred to as Sod HaIbur, which is the secret of the intercalation of the months, is one of the things which the rabbis must keep secret and must never reveal. Now, there are definitely lots of books that will describe the Jewish calendar.
Yeah.
But for me, it was always like this weird thing that the Talmud was just so incredibly insistent on the importance of this secret, right? And so it's generally one of those things that's just considered, okay, if you're a very, very advanced student, you're already we're talking, maybe you should be studying astrology type things, right? That's when you start actually looking at the exactness of the calendar, which I never understood until.
And you're a Freemason and a Jew, and you don't know how it works, or and can't tell us.
Well, the funny thing is, I never understood what this insistence until I saw how central this entire argument has been in Christian history, and also in
Second Temple Judaism. There are multiple schisms over the calendar.
Yeah, and the Quran specifically has a prohibition of intercalation of months. the Quran has
the Bible.
Yeah.
The early Christians, it's like, guys, no more arguments about genealogies. We're not going to talk. Like, I wonder about
Sabbaths, yeah,
new moons, Sabbaths.
But Jacob, do you think that might factor into the Council of Nicaea's decision? If the rabbis are like, no, we're not going to explain to you how we do it, right? Like,
yes. But at the same time,
just trust us.
At the same time, it makes me think the rabbis knew something.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I mean, nowadays there are these tables. So Hillel HaKatan, who was a great grandchild of Hillel, the famous one, apparently his Sanhedrin made a permanent calendar, and so it basically repeats every 19 years, which is what we use these days. There's a cycle of 19 years which repeats. So yeah.
Father Stephen, can I ask a question regarding orthodoxy? You being the representative of your denomination here, as the representative,
neither
of
which is true. Neither am I in a denomination, nor am I the official representative. But yes, go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. As the representative of the one true church, I have some questions.
As a low-ranking representative, yes.
That's fine. It's the best we got. What is specifically, I'm wondering about if the feasts are, in fact, if all of them are truly honored in the Orthodox calendar. Like, is Yom Kippur honored?
Yes.
And how would it be? So, like, is the date honored?
When you get into it, so depends on what you mean by all of them. In that, there's, I don't think, or the people who I've seen try to argue this, it's a stretch to try and get like Purim in there.
I don't think Purim does not count. I'm talking about the ones in the Torah.
That doesn't count.
We all agree Purim. Hanukkah doesn't count either, and even though Jesus celebrated it.
Yeah, well, there is actually theophany on January 6th. There's a little bit of stuff with lights and that you can connect to Hanukkah. It has nothing to do with the Maccabean revolt. There's no connection there really, but
anyway,
that's kind of a stretch too. But like Yom Kippur now. So on September 1st, right, which may or may not be the civil calendar's September 1st. That gets into a whole other thing, right? But September 1st is the indiction, which is the ecclesiastical New Year, which most years
that would be
roughly coincides with the Feast of Trumpets. And then within a couple of weeks after that, you have the Feast of the Elevation of the Cross. So parallel to Yom Kippur, we have a Feast of the Cross that's picking up.
Is this followed by some kind of a tabernacle?
You also, in that same time period, you have the Feast of the Transfiguration, which took place around the time of the Feast of Tabernacles. That's why you have St. Peter saying, we should build 3 booths or tents or right.
Okay.
And we have the blessing of the beginning of the harvest at that. And
my interpretation of that, so I'd love to hear your opinion on it, is that at the end of Zechariah, I was actually talking to Jacob about this. At the end of Zechariah, it says that in the resurrection, the Gentiles will come up and celebrate the Feast of Booths with the Lord. And so I don't think that it has to do with the day, like the actual timing of the calendar. I think, look, Moses and Elijah are here and their friend is glowing and floating. It seems like the resurrection may have happened. And that because in the resurrection,
that is the context of that, and that's why we have the blessing of the harvest there. I come out and bless grapes and olives and things,
Okay, but it doesn't
generally Mediterranean things, just because Orthodox Church, and I've got Lebanese people.
Yeah, but it doesn't seem to me that it necessarily is calendar-wise lined up with.
It is roughly, but only roughly.
Okay, yeah.
And part of that is the way the Julian calendar we're using and the Jewish calendar, the way they both bounce around off of each other, right? You can see the general pattern, but the days don't always. Sometimes they line up pretty well. Some years less so.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if the fruits are the 7 biblical fruits that pomegranates, dates, figs.
That weird looking lemon thing.
No, that's not considered one of the 7.
Weird looking lemon.
You're thinking
it looks like a lemon. What is it? Yeah.
It's called a citron. Yes.
Generally, yes. Yeah, that's the. Yeah.
It is the 7 from the Bible.
Yeah.
Okay, that you end up blessing. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
So in countries where you can grow all those things, obviously, right? I mean,
well, we live in the.
If you're in Siberia, you're kind of, you have trouble getting fresh grapes.
This is a very specific niche question. Do you believe that the Day of Judgment will be Yom Kippur?
Not necessarily.
Okay. All right.
I mean, in a sense, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Yom Kippur is sort of the Day of Judgment, but it could end up being any day of the year and would still be Yom Kippur.
But no matter when it happens, it is.
Yeah, right.
It is Yom Kippur.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, I have to ask, how do you interpret the "meet me up in the air" thing from Paul?
Oh yeah, this is actually surprisingly easy.
I think so too. But, you didn't ask me.
If you know Roman culture,
yeah,
and you know what a Roman triumph is, when a major, so St. Paul is writing about this to the Thessalonians. So this is a Roman Greek city, right? This is mostly Gentiles, right? And when a Roman dignitary like a senator or a general or the emperor himself was coming to your city, that was announced in advance, and the people would leave the city to go out to greet him, and they would accompany them into the city. It was called a triumph. It was like a big parade.
Yeah, like the Arch of Triumph.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Like that was
there'd
the thing.
And there'd be a parade then back into the city. So the idea he's appealing to there is that when Jesus appears again, this guy, the people are going to run out to meet him and escort him down.
Yeah.
At which point the last judgment will take place. Because this is one of St. Paul's basic things. God is going to judge the world through his Messiah.
Okay, so since Jesus is going to start coming in from the top, we're also going to go out to go meet him?
Yeah, and then come right back down. Yeah.
Yeah. This has become
a man is going to come on the clouds of heaven.
Yeah. I mean, this Paul guy was pretty creative, I have to tell you.
Well, no, he's trying to explain to Romans something they didn't understand, right? Like,
I think he was very creative.
Yes, because God never requests people meet him halfway up a mountain, for instance, to welcome his presence down. That never occurs.
In the air?
Yeah, there's some stuff that's just unbelievable, like flying into the air or talking donkeys, or
Yeah,
You obviously have not had a Jewish mother.
we are talking about like talking about. Of course,
she would be like, "You are not going in the air. You're going to break a neck. You're going to."
Yeah.
Well, we'll try to hand out helmets before.
But this, I think, even I think this has become a lot more universally taught, unless you're one of the crazy people that still believes in the rapture, which that's fine. You're not reading scholarship anyway. But if you are reading scholarship, it's like N.T. Wright won't shut up about this. There's a lot of people who now like that's a pretty common interpretation of what the
other rapture verse is funnier. Where they take the one from St. Matthew's Gospel, where they take,
because you're like, that's the bad people.
Two will be working in the field, and one will be taken, and the other will be left.
Yeah.
So we grinding grain, one will be taken, and the other will be left. And then they cut there. But if you keep reading in St. Matthew's Gospel, Jesus then says, "Where will this happen?" You ask. Where the bodies are, there the vultures will gather.
Vultures will be, yeah.
Taken does not mean rapture. Taken means dead, right?
Yeah. Well, and even the comparison to the flood, in the language which is used, taken means taken by the flood, not taken by the ark. Like the language is very clear. It's
Yeah, and that's not new. The reason that's all through the New Testament is that's all through Second Temple Judaism.
Oh yeah,
all through Second Temple Jewish texts are like, the world is now horrible, everything is corrupt, it's gotten as bad as it was before the flood, so we know the day of the Lord is imminent, any day now, and it's going to come upon us. That's why they're writing about Enoch, right? Because they have Enoch prophesying about the flood. And talk about how evil things are, when really they're talking about the Romans, right? Like they're talking about
right.
Like they're talking about the Sadducees. They're talking about
I've told you what the Talmud says. 3 reasons why the world, God doesn't destroy the world. One of the 3 being they don't write marriage documents for 2 men.
Let me see if I can do the 3. You said. They don't write documents for men. They don't sell human organs.
Human flesh.
Human flesh is not sold. And what was number 3? Number 3 was
they have respect for the Torah.
Okay, there we are.
Yeah.
Does Hufu count on that first one?
What's Hufu?
Of course you know about Hufu.
An anthropology professor,
of course,
created soy human.
Based on all of the accounts that were
based on research into cannibal groups, so that his students could have the experience of eating human without actually eating human. It was tofu.
Isn't
but that was textured to be like human.
Isn't the answer just pork? Don't we just taste like pigs? I hear we taste like pigs. I know a guy. No.
Supposedly. I don't think that comes from actual cannibals. I think that comes from, there's urban legends about that, but I think that comes from just what people smell like when they burn.
Okay.
Well, a large percentage of your taste faculties actually does come from the smell of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And there are enough like us that we can take their valves and stuff like that.
Yeah, somebody was really surprised that Judaism doesn't allow for organ donations, but does allow for pig hearts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Somebody was like, "Really? You're allowed to have a pig heart?" I'm like, "Yeah, you're allowed to have a pig heart." Yeah,
but not a human heart.
Well, human heart. So the difficulty is, it like the way they do the donations.
You have to still be alive when they.
You have to still be alive. So that is not allowed. There are many rabbis which allow for you to receive a Gentile heart, but don't allow for so this gets all kinds of weird, because like, so many rabbis have said if you can donate, you have to donate. So like the kidney thing is, so Israel gives a lot of kidneys to the rest, mostly Europe, and Europe gives a lot of hearts back to Israel. That's the way it works. But like Jewish heart donations are not done. Yeah. It's a weird functional thing where it's like, well, if Gentiles are doing this to each other, like, we're not going to stop you, but
I mean, we're just dogs, right?
Yeah. What?
We're just dogs, right? So dog, pig heart, whatever.
No,
I mean, have a different soul. Jacob will say that we don't have as nice of a soul as him.
I did not say you do not have as nice of a soul. I said,
look, I've seen the souls. I've seen the souls. They're very nice.
Decorative or something.
They're very nice.
I don't think a Jew is allowed to remove the heart of thing from a Gentile.
Yeah. The Orthodox Christian tradition is kind of ambivalent on it too.
Yeah.
In that, like, on one hand, it's acknowledged that obviously if you could save a life, you should, right? Like, that's a positive ethical statement. But then there's also a lot of positive ethical statements about the integrity of the body, right? And
well, if the
person having to technically be alive when you remove it and all that. And so those two are seen to kind of both be true. And so a lot of it is left to personal and a case-by-case kind of basis, rather than making a general ruling like it's good or it's bad, or, right, that you have to take much more things into account.
Yeah, I mean, just generally, like, the fact that the other person is alive, like, that really causes a lot of problems in halacha.
Yeah.
Like, if you could let the
slightly related question.
Yeah.
Are the Orthodox allowed to eat black pudding? Like blood sausage? Is this permissible?
Jews or Christians?
What?
Orthodox Jews or Orthodox Christians?
Sorry, Orthodox. Well, sorry, I already know the answer for Jews. I don't know the answer for Christians.
Oh yeah, no, we're not. No.
Okay.
See Acts 15.
I was part of a German Baptist church for a brief period of time. I was on staff, and it was because there were so many Germans that ate blood sausage. It was in this, like, you had to agree to it in their statement of faith that none of the pastors would eat the blood sausages. Can't do it. I don't care how German you are.
Yeah, there's blood boudin down here in Louisiana. You're not allowed to eat blood.
Yeah.
You're not allowed to eat. In fact, I was just looking at the canons about this a while ago, and like the apostolic canon about it explicitly says, because this is forbidden by the Torah.
Yeah.
And you're also so the penalty is, if you're clergy, you're deposed. If you're a layperson, you're excommunicated.
Really?
Yes. If you eat blood, and that extends to the same canons if you eat basically an animal that's found dead.
Really?
Because it tells that, yeah.
An animal that's found dead. I'm guessing this is deliberately, right?
Well,
deliberately eat it. Yeah. Not someone slips it to you and you don't know. Yeah.
Part of that is because the blood remains
still in it.
Yeah,
the blood is still in it.
Yeah, to eat.
It hasn't been killed. It had the blood drained. Yeah.
Jacob, you're following my Bible study. This is one of the things that happens. The people are all hungry in Samuel, and they eat a bunch of animals before they let the blood run out, and God is so pissed. He's very upset.
But yeah, that's a Christian thing, going back to Acts 15, and still in force in the Orthodox Church.
other laws regarding the Torah. Must you bury your feces, or is that just good advice but not sinful to go against? Like, will someone?
That's not one of the ones that was applied to all nations in Leviticus.
And we say that only applies during war anyway.
I think that
it's pretty clear there in the Hebrew that it's talking about war.
We do have. I'm about to do tomorrow morning. We do have the 40 days of purification for a woman after she gives birth. And then she and the baby are received into the church. I'm doing one of those tomorrow.
There was half a second where I was like, Father Stephen, how are you doing that tomorrow?
I gave birth 40 days ago. No. So, but yeah, I'm doing the prayers. Related to that.
Oh yeah, you have church tomorrow morning.
Yeah, I'm not going to stay on as late as usual. But yeah, we're doing one of those in the morning. So there are a lot of things that it's not even like, oh, this is a fulfilled version that's barely recognizable, where it's like direct carryover. Some of the issues between Orthodoxy and Roman Catholicism have to do with this. When you get into nitty-gritty stuff in canon law, like around the Council of Florence and stuff, like they straight up call us Judaizers on some of this stuff.
Yeah, I could see it.
Because the Eastern tradition has kept a bunch of these things.
Well, I keep on calling you a Judaizer. But I mean that as a good thing.
Well, yeah, I told I talked to Pajot this week. The video's not up yet, but I mentioned that. I said on a good day, I get called a Judaizer and an anti-Semite, close to back. So
fun days.
Yeah.
You were talking about the Paul book, but
I had the fun part where people just thought that I was Jewish. I had to explain to them that I wasn't at all. Not trying to be. No. Now you can know about these things and people don't just think you're Jewish. But 10 years ago, if you were interested in Second Temple stuff, people are like, and you're also khaki. Again, white people were just like, I think he's Jewish.
I tell you, I have people who think I'm Jewish just because they see the word Orthodox.
And the beard, yeah.
I had a license plate frame like 20 years ago when I lived in Texas that said 2,000 years of Orthodox Christianity. And between the word Orthodox and Christianity, there was a big cross. And I got in a fender bender with this old guy who, because he was an old guy, insisted on like calling the cops and doing a report and everything. And so while we're standing there waiting, he looks at this frame and says, "So I see you're Jewish." Because apparently the word Christianity and a big cross did not tip him off otherwise.
Yeah.
I mean, was it one of these weird crosses you guys do? The Eastern Orthodox cross?
I mean, it had the 3 bars, but it's still noticeably a cross with the word Christianity right next to it. Plus, I'm fairly goy looking, I think.
Nah, you could.
This is before the gray. I was just blonde and blue eyes. Like,
oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, other than being really tall, you could fit in at a lot of synagogues.
Now that the beard is gray, it helps, I imagine. But yeah, 6'4", blonde hair, blue eyes was not,
Yeah. The 6'4" thing. That's what does it. Yeah.
Father Stephen, have you seen Hail Caesar? Actually, Jacob, have you seen Hail Caesar?
I have, yes.
There's this great scene where it's
Coen Brothers movie.
It's supposed to be during like the golden era of Hollywood, and they're making like an epic Jesus piece, like picture, and they bring in like an Orthodox metropolitan. They bring in like a priest, a pastor, and they bring in like some random rabbi. to just kind of talk about whether or not anything offensive was there, like theologically offensive. But the Orthodox priest only wants to talk about plot holes. Like he has no interest in anything theological that is there. It's great. It's a great little one.
Okay. So should we actually try to see if any of the comments are...
They're not helpful. They're really not helpful. I've been watching, and sometimes funny, but oh, the rabbit trails.
Real Father Stephen, not outro Father Stephen? Yes, real Father
That's a very good joke.
Actual me.
We actually have... and apparently Colonimus, it was very
this
similar
one.
coloration when he was young. Yeah.
Jacob and Father Stephen DeYoung look like brothers.
Colonimus apparently had the exact same coloration, Father Stephen. So there you go.
Okay.
Oh, have you been to Mount Athos?
I have not.
You have not.
I have not.
How come?
I am not a big pilgrimage guy.
Huh.
I have nothing against it.
I thought you told me in order to get permission to go to Mount Athos, you had to like ask a ton of people.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, but I could make that happen.
Don't you have to get permission for certain amounts of traveling because of your authority as well?
Because I'm a priest. Yeah.
Yeah. Like
anytime I'm leaving my bishop's territory, going into another bishop's territory, I have to get permission from both, and like letters from both. And
how otherwise you might start another church or something.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if somebody shows up, anybody who wants to can go buy an outfit and dress like a priest or a bishop and show up in your church.
Yeah.
Claiming to be whatever. So it's like, okay, show me your papers.
Brother Nathaniel.
Yeah. And if you don't have any, then buy, That's, so yeah. But so that can be done. It's not that much of a hassle, but I don't know. It's part of it with Mount Athos. I'm sure. I know everyone I know who's gone there have had these amazing experiences. But it's three parts with me. One part is I'd have to leave here and leave my wife for an extended period of time, which I don't really want to do. A lot of people don't know my wife's disabled, so that's not really a good thing. And I really don't like traveling anymore, especially by air. Like it's just not an enjoyable experience to me. And three, I have a deep-seated terror of holy people because I'm not one. And that becomes especially apparent to me when I'm around them. And so I don't know that I'd have a good time at Mount Athos. Like, I think my imposter syndrome would kick in times like a million.
That was such a... Did you intend to do a Norm Macdonald impression at the beginning of that?
Not
I
really.
have a deep-seated terror of holy people.
I am a big Norm Macdonald fan, so it may have crept in unawares. But yeah. So between those three things, being totally honest, that's why I don't go to Mount Athos.
Fascinating.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of holy people I've met. I don't know if I've ever been terrified.
I know that when I first became a Christian and I would hang out with my friends and they would be drinking and doing the drugs we used to do together. They were not okay with me not doing them. If you really want to be a buzzkill, you just don't have to do the drugs that other people are doing, and they will not like that at all.
Well, I mean, part of it is just a general horrible case of imposter syndrome. And the only thing that mitigates that for me is that all the people who I most respect and admire in the world, I have learned also have horrible imposter syndrome. So that makes me feel a little better about it. But yeah.
Can you clear up cremation in the Orthodox Church? People were talking about that for a while.
We don't do it.
Okay. That's what one person said, but then someone said there were mixed answers.
Yeah. If someone is cremated, I can't do any services.
Really?
No funeral services, no nothing.
Really?
With cremated remains. Yeah. That's if they're deliberately cremated. I mean, if someone dies in a fire, that's different, right? But if they choose to be cremated.
Huh.
Yeah.
What is the next book?
The next book is the Baal book, which I am hoping will be titled the Baal book. I want to keep that title. It's just all about Baal.
Of Tarsus?
Well, including, but mainly the one in the Old mainly the one in the Hebrew Bible.
Okay.
But the Baal of Tarsus will probably get a shout out at some point.
Do you think that
I've got really clever pun titles that I'm hoping they keep. The titles are all like bail out, make bail, right? Like, hey, bail. And somebody pedantic is going to be like, it's actually pronounced Baal. I'll be like, you're a thief of joy.
Yeah. Lots of people. Yeah, but there's not enough jokes that, sound like Baal.
Yeah,
if it was called a hey Baal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, the word Baal is just used too much in Hebrew for it to be at all like it's not commonly, because it's used all over the place for other things.
Uriah as the husband of Bathsheba is the Baal of Bathsheba.
Yeah. Oh, like God says, "Have I not been a Baal to you?" And it's like, yeah, means husband.
But this is about the Phoenician god one.
Right, but that's
about Carmel,
and it's the same thing. Is Adonai is the name for foreign gods. Molech is the name, like Molech, Melech. It's the same name as well. All of our great names for God just happen to also be horrible entities you can sacrifice a child to.
But there is, in Ugaritic, there is the Baal cycle. So there is
right.
I mean, and Baal's father is El, which is just God. Yeah.
God. Yeah.
So, yeah.
Is the lack of cremation for preservation for the resurrection?
Yes.
Okay.
Insofar as you are able, you are to treat the body with respect, because the body is also the image of God.
And the bones in particular, right?
Well, yeah, because they last longer.
Yeah.
Lucille Bale. There you go.
Lucille Baal.
Lucille Baal, yeah.
Yeah. That is good. That's a good one. Having a Baal. These are pretty good.
Is a life of an Orthodox saint, like, you mean anyone, or
just pick one at random?
And
a whole bunch of them in the Hebrew Bible.
I was listening to NT Wright on Justin Brierley, and he was talking about how he has a new interpretation of Romans 8 because of one of his students. And it was just like, Really? You're reinterpreting biblical passages that you're like, it's like basic
Still a
biblical,
Protestant.
I guess.
Emperor Reformata.
But he's
You
a
always
bishop.
keep going back to the Bible
Guess so.
and reevaluating.
I don't think you guys do the same thing we do, which is we have a belief that
it's even in the Brothers Karamazov. In the Brothers Karamazov,
Yeah. No, that is an
what's his
Orthodox.
name? Zosima
but you guys still
doesn't.
chop them into pieces. You guys chop everyone into tiny pieces. It's like it's the weirdest thing.
You're not supposed to. As bodies crumble, parts are sometimes taken.
Oh, I thought people get chopped up into pieces.
No, a lot of the chopping happens with. So, for example, Fourth Crusade comes and sacks Constantinople.
Mm-hmm.
They cut St. Stephen's hand off and take it back with them, right? Like, a lot of the chopping happened at particular historical intervals.
Okay.
Right. So, like the relic of St. Paul that was at the church, the camp church. Did you know, did I tell you that was there? The camp church at the village?
I didn't know. Yeah. I figured there's a bunch of relics all over the place. I try not to get too close.
Also, Jacob,
it was a tiny piece of bone fragment, right? Like he died 2,000 years ago, right? So I mean,
also, Jacob, people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Okay, so you throwing stones at the Orthodox, your people are known for cutting off a very particular body part over and over again. Okay. Very well known.
And of all the ones to pick,
children is a completely other thing than chopping dead bodies into pieces.
So, but yeah, no, there are incorrupt saints. We have a tradition of incorrupt.
Yeah. Saints. Well, and that's the whole thing with the Brothers Karamazov is Zosima does rot, and that leads Alyosha to a momentary doubt because everyone is throwing shade on Zosima.
What is the animal apocalypse, and what happened to Noah and Bull?
Love the animal apocalypse. Look, Jesus is a unicorn, okay? We all agree Jesus is a unicorn, right?
Part of the Book of Enoch.
Yeah.
And it's basically retelling the history of the Hebrew Bible, portraying different figures as animals.
And part of it also follows through a tradition about the Josephite Messiah, where Joseph is compared to this animal that was the firstborn is meant for sacrifice, but then comes back as the aurochs, which is an animal that was undefeatable. So it's an image
and a wild animal.
Like, wild. The wild aurochs that could not be tamed, where Joseph is going to die and then like as the sacrificial animal and then come back as the conquering animal.
Right. Yeah. Because that's connected to the whole Ephraim becoming the fullness of the Gentiles.
That's right.
Genesis 48. Yeah. But yeah, Noah's a bull. Noah is the last person who's a bull. And part of the theme there is that humanity has kind of gotten worse over time. That there's been kind of a devolution in terms of the quality of folks they had around in their day compared to the great days of earlier on in the Hebrew scriptures.
As much as I want to talk more about the animal apocalypse, it's weird. It's very, well, as opposed to the rest of the Book of Enoch, it's weird. No, I got to get going, but I will listen to more of you talk about the animal apocalypse while I brush my teeth.
There's people are really excited about it. Yeah.
Well, Father Stephen has to be up tomorrow morning. What time do you get up in the morning for liturgy?
Oh, early.
Like 5 or 6?
Yeah, sometimes earlier than that. Depends. But
Wow.
I don't sleep much, so
Apparently,
we're still good for a little bit, but not
Yeah.
forever.
Okay.
Unless you need to.
No, I mean, I should probably get to bed, but since when do I ever do that?
But yeah.
Was there anything you wanted to talk about?
No, I just,
You were just
it was
listening.
relatively early in the evening, and
You saw me railing against Protestants. You were like, I have to get in on that.
well, it's always Christians and the Christian church, and then you pick,
Well, it would be
a
very,
bunch
very
of nuts falling off a twig of a branch somewhere.
Well, I don't think you could call.
It's news to me that the Calvinists are all Nazis too. Okay, like I didn't see this coming. This wasn't on my bingo card for 2024.
Honestly, it's been strange the number. Like, I have been trying not pick, but it has been strange the number of people coming out of the woodwork, like full on. Well, Hitler wasn't really that bad.
Yeah, I mean, like I consider James White. James White is like, if you ask a lot of Calvinists, they would say his rhetoric and his debate stuff make him kind of a debate bro. Like they would say, well, that's not the best representative of like well-reasoned stuff. But when he's like, hey, being a Nazi is bad, and his whole audience turns on him, like something has gone deeply wrong.
Yeah,
in the whole sphere, right? Like,
I don't know if you saw the other one I did, but like when the people who are coming to defend the Jews are like, well, Jesus hates Judaism. Like, this is something they've been saying like over and over again. That what they all agree on is Jesus hates Judaism, right?
Well, Calvinists are big on God hating certain people. That's like their whole raison d'etre. Like that's what separates them from other Christians, is they think God hates certain people.
That is, I mean, this whole thing of like the elect and predestination and like, and I honestly, I do think it turns around on their view of what I get a lot of Christians who think that in the Bible, God hates the Gentiles until Jesus comes around.
Which is just, they haven't read the Hebrew Bible or the Christian Old Testament at all. Right?
Okay, but like that is their belief. Like when I keep on pointing out that like, oh, like the Ninevites were all Gentiles, right? It's like it's like news to people. It's like
in their minds, all of American Protestantism is Calvinist, whether they realize it and want to admit it or not. It historically grew out of Puritanism, and they have these things in their head. So when you say elect or chosen to a Protestant, they think that is synonymous with saved.
Yeah.
Which, of course, is not. Right? Right? The whole idea of chosen biblically is chosen for a particular purpose. And if you don't fulfill that purpose, you are very much not in a good place with God if you don't do what he chose you to do. Right? Like being chosen doesn't make you special. It could be worse on you if you're chosen and you don't,
This equating Gentile with damned is very common. They imagine
because they have election.
Yeah. They imagine and a lot of them do imagine that that's what Judaism teaches. Like this is the thing. When I talk to a Christian, and they say a word like Jew or Judaism, my first thing is, how do you define that? Like, what's a Jew? Who's a Jew? Like, who's Jewish? right? Like, there's several people who've been involved in my. I don't know how much you listened to me and the Byzantine SCOTUS, Gideon. Like, he was raised in a conservative Jewish home, which is not conservative at all.
Right. And barely Jewish. Yeah.
Yeah. And he became Eastern Orthodox, and now he's Catholic, right? And my question to him is, okay, what makes you Jewish, right? As a Catholic, what makes you, like, is it your ethnicity? Is it your father? Is it your mother? What exactly makes you Jewish, right? And they're having an identity crisis. They're trying to figure out what's a Jewish Catholic. And within Eastern Orthodoxy, I also get people like, okay, so who are these Jews you're talking about, and how do you define that? And most of them don't actually have a word for, like, an actual definition, and certainly not one that works with Romans, because a lot of the ones, like, it doesn't work with Romans. However they define Israel, Gentile, and Jew, like, it's like, show me how you read Romans. And some of them will say to me, oh, well, he's using it differently there as we would use it in other places.
Yeah, those are all kind of weak arguments, right? Like, when you get to the point of, I mean, this is why you know, we did an episode of Lord of Spirits where I was running through this whole elect thing. We did it right after the presidential election. So I said, this is our election, you know, episode. Try and troll people. That's, and the thing with it is, you just go through all the passages the Calvinists use in Romans and in Ephesians and stuff. And when you show that those don't teach what they teach, it's like, okay, well, there aren't really any texts left for you to, you know, to go to, right? To understand it that way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Like, I mean, you can't get more clear than St. Paul does in Romans. He said there's, you know, the calling of God regarding Israel, regarding the Jewish people, is permanent, right? But again, a Protestant reads that, American Protestant reads that and thinks, oh, so does that mean they're all saved just automatically by being Jew? It's like, no. They've always been called to this, right?
Right.
Like, read the Hebrew Bible. They didn't always fulfill it. Right? And that's,
what do we do with confused people? So how do we get rid of all the confused people? Like, concentration camps? What are you thinking?
No, it's like my goal when I first came down here to Lafayette, Louisiana. It's why I didn't join any ministerial associations. Because if I go and join a ministerial association, then if I'm honest, the first day I have to say, I want to convert all your people and close all your churches. And then they don't want me there anymore. See, I have these discussions with you, and there's probably people who think I'm an ecumenist, and I'm like the least ecumenical person in the world. Like, I want everyone to be an Orthodox Christian. I'd love it if you were one, right? But like,
I say the exact same thing. I am not in any way. I'm certainly not a perennialist.
No.
Yeah, and the people who understand that and don't mind it, don't mind me clearly being like, okay, like, yes, I hope you repent of the Trinity. There, I said it. Right?
Right. Yeah. Like, I wish you would accept Jesus as the Messiah. You wish I would get over that whole Jesus is the Messiah thing. Right.
Like, right. Yeah. Yeah.
You know?
We're being clear here. And now the pre-Chalcedonians are here.
How's it going?
By the way, the Coptic church that Andrew goes to, they have so many relics that are so old. Like they apparently have a piece of Saint Mark. I don't know how they got him, but they apparently have him.
Well, Saint Mark died in Alexandria, Egypt. So
Yep. And then the Catholics took him away, and then we got him back. Don't worry. Yeah.
Crusaders just went around taking stuff for a while there.
Stephen, I don't believe we've ever met. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. This is the first time on your stream.
Welcome.
Get my microphone out. Well, I just wanted to. I actually had a night out because my wife was at a party, so I have time. So I'm chilling out in the garage, and lo and behold. But real quick, I do have to get this out of the way. Father Stephen, my claim to fame is I'm Richard Rowland's first godson.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So that's why the blood feud you have going on with him is quite irksome.
I would say it's a blood feud. I can barely remember his name most of the time. I mean,
I have to say, Rick Rowland, the only problem I have with Richard is he takes D&D way too seriously. Like I was DMing in his tournament, and he's just too serious about like
he's pretty
all
hardcore.
rules. Yeah, it's like, come on, man.
It's first edition. It's first edition. There barely are rules.
I was DMing for Wizards of the Coast. They still hate me at Wizards of the Coast headquarters. Like, but I was never that that hardcore. Yeah.
I only get maybe one night a week with them, and I have to butt in any conversations between Warhammer games he has going on late at night. So he's a serious cat.
Apparently.
Yeah, pretty much the whole time we were at Peugeot Fest, I was just roasting him, like in the car on the way to and from events, and like.
Well, you're the one who mentioned that he's Rick Rowland. I mean, when I heard that, I just started cracking up. Yeah.
I don't know if you heard the last episode of Lord of Spirits, because they just had a baby.
Mazel.
So I encouraged all of our literally tens of thousands of listeners to message him with their suggestions for a baby name. So I hope he's getting plenty of good
Is it a boy or a girl?
emails, text messages, etc.
Is
It's a girl.
It's a girl? Oh, I guess Gamaliel is out.
Gamalia.
Yeah. Somebody sent him Spiridona, I know, as a suggestion.
I think Dragomira is one that's not used very often.
So, I mean, I don't know how he pronounced that with his Jamaican patois.
This reminds me. Okay, so if you have to baptize your kids in a saint's name, how do you end up with any new saint names?
Well, so you're supposed to choose an existing saint, but things happen with bishops.
Okay.
So, for example, I know a guy who wanted to change his name, but unfortunately he told Metropolitan Philip that.
Okay.
And I forget what his name was. It was Ridge or something. I don't know. But he said, no, but sin, there's no saint, whatever. And he said, Tim, you become a saint. Then it will be a saint's name.
Okay.
So that happens.
Oh, and once the Metropolitan says you keep your name, then you get to be baptized in that name?
Well, yeah. If he tells you not to, then yeah.
Okay.
But
there is a habit of people wanting to try to find the most obscure, like coolest saint names in the lexicon. But they keep it pretty simple with us. Like my name was Stephen, so there you go.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, it's just, it's the same reason, Jacob.
Yeah,
not a super creative Jewish name, right? Like,
I was actually named after my great grandfather who died right before, like a year before I was born. Yeah, especially in Israel. So we've had a rash of Nimrods because, especially among the secular Israelis, Nimrod means we will rebel. And there was a famous statue that some artist made of Nimrod, which became really popular. So not too long ago, the Israeli ambassador to the United States, his name was Nimrod.
You realize in the Torah, like that's a pagan god, right? Like,
yes, that's why the secular do it.
Yeah.
that is deliberately why the secular do it. And so there's definitely a lot of politicians, especially the secular ones, name their kids Nimrod, etc. Yeah, it's what can you do?
I do have a question for Jacob and Father DeYoung, if you're up for it.
Please.
It's a question y'all have talked with in your previous streams about what does it mean for after Christ, no man will have to teach his neighbor the Torah. But I was reading Father DeYoung's book on Paul and in the translations of his writings. And in it, Paul does make a distinction between receiving the Torah in the state of Adam versus what would be the equivalent of receiving a Torah with a reclaimed human nature. Is that one of the things that Paul discusses from your understanding? For instance, it's like for part of it for me was it's not so much teaching as in like knowledge, but the Torah was given to basically teach what sin is with a fallen state, and then Christ reclaims that state. What actually could, like, what would be a Torah in a reclaimed human nature?
I mean, what I would say there is I wouldn't draw a connection between Adam and Jesus there, but there is a sense in which, so this actually gets into our eventual Romans discussion, is that the resurrection that's represented by Christian baptism, right, is a new beginning, right? And so there's an understanding that, a lot of what St. Paul is writing about, he's reading it historically. This is one of the problems is the Lutheran reading sort of personalizes it, that what St. Paul is writing about is like the experience of an individual person. Whereas I think what Paul is writing about a lot in Romans is actually the experience of the nation of Israel. Right? So it's not that every individual, like human on earth, received the Torah and failed to keep it. And so now they're a sinner who's going to go to hell. But then Jesus makes it all okay. Right? It's that he's talking about just the historical fact that the Torah was given to Moses. Israel received it. Israel failed to keep it. Israel went into exile, and symbolically the prophets died. Right? But now in the resurrection of the Messiah, Israel is also resurrected. And so gets to make a new beginning at keeping Torah. Right? And that new beginning is empowered by the Holy Spirit. So in terms of it being written on the heart of like the Gentiles, so you don't need to be taught it, I think St. Paul literally means that if you are baptized into Christianity and you receive the Spirit of God, that the righteous, as he calls it, the righteous requirements of the Torah are written on your heart. The righteous requirements of the Torah for a Gentile are not identical, right, to the righteous requirements of the Gentile on a Jewish person, right? But I think it is written on the heart of a Christian to turn from idolatry, to turn from including meat sacrifice to idols, to not commit murder, to not commit sexual immorality, and I think this is why you see this societal effect on the Gentile nations as they convert to Christianity, where there are fundamental cultural changes regarding sexuality, regarding religious practice, regarding the end of idolatry. Like those things fundamentally do change. No, the Russians don't start keeping kosher, but the Russians weren't supposed to start keeping kosher, right? The Greeks don't all start getting circumcised, but the Greeks weren't supposed to all start getting circumcised. But they do stop worshiping Zeus. Right? They do get rid of the idols. They do outlaw pederasty. Right? Those things that are required of Gentiles do happen, right, on this large scale as Christianity spreads. So that's my answer to it.
I mean, this is one of my classic things of this is proof Christianity is false. Seriously. Like the idea that this has come to pass the way Jeremiah and Isaiah and Hosea and all, like, I think it's very clear it hasn't, right? And I am glad that there has been forward movement, but I believe there's constant forward movement, and that's good and that's great. But when it comes down to it, the day that we are looking forward to, right, is that day when, I don't know about anybody else, but that for me personally, God's law will be in my heart such that I, who is the least, right? It says from the greatest to the least, will not need someone to say to me, hey, Jacob, know God, right? And until that day becomes fulfilled, like that is the messianic promise. And so, like, when a Christian says Jesus is the Messiah, my answer is, what is your proof? And I haven't seen proof that, certainly in my life, that that's something that has come to pass.
Well, like in our understanding, it's like the problem is death and then sin. And how does your tradition is that even a problem, or how does your tradition understand that problem?
I'm not sure I understand you. Do you say that again?
In Orthodox Christianity, two of the big problems are death,
right,
and then congruent sin. So,
right,
Adam inherits death.
mm-hmm.
Cain instigates sin on the world. in your tradition, are those problems that get resolved?
Yes, I mean that's part of the thing. Like, how exactly, like, yeah, like when Christians say to me, Jesus defeated death by death, I'm like, well, I mean, I go to Eden Memorial. Both my grandmothers, few of my aunts, few of my uncles, some of my cousins are all there. Like, I don't see death being defeated. I certainly haven't seen sin being defeated either. Like, yeah, this. So, like, until I learned the word preterism, right, and found out it was a Christian heresy, I thought all Christians were preterists, which made me think all Christians are just being absurd, right? Now, Christians will constantly tell me it's now and not yet. Now, you know, all kinds of. I talk about Schrodinger's Messiah, right? Jesus is the Messiah, not the Messiah. He's alive, he's dead, he's this, he's that, he's God, he's man, he's everything, right? It's like, I'm sorry, I like, like I'm plainly looking forward to the day that death and sin will be will actually be gone, right? And that's not now. So when a Christian tells me this is something that happened 2,000 years ago, is ongoing now, like, it's like, I'm sorry, like, if Doubting Thomas, call me Doubting Thomas. Doubting Thomas seems like a pretty smart guy to me.
So, because we've talked about it before, so I know you know, right? There are plenty of texts in the Hebrew Scriptures that imply there is a span of time between the coming of the Messiah and the end.
2,000 years.
Well, that's the question I'm going to ask you. How long is it allowed to be? How long is too long?
So, I mean, I'll fall back on Maimonides as I always do, right? Which is he says there are people that appear to be righteous people, and if they and we have a hope, just as Rabbi Akiva had of Bar Kokhba, that they will be the Messiah, and if it works out, yay, great, and if it doesn't, next, right?
But
so
when do you say next? Do you allow 5 years, 10 years,
20
years, 100 years?
Part of the reason I am not your average Lubavitch Chabad Chassid is once the Rebbe passed, right? And there's plenty of people who will say, oh, it's only been 30 years. But that's 30 years too many for me. I have a picture. I still have a picture of the Rebbe up, but
so the death of the person is the cutoff for you, period.
As far as I am concerned, like, yeah, it's like, what?
That's not everybody's opinion.
If I mean, the Talmud says people still claim so and so and so and so, right? But if we're choosing from among the dead, like, there's a lot of candidates out there. And again, I have to go back to Acts 5 and Gamliel. And it's like, okay, you want to believe it's Jesus? I don't care that much. I really don't. You know, that's like, that is what Gamliel in Acts 5 is talking about. He's like, okay, these guys wanted to be Jesus. That's not the point, right? And this is Rabbi Skobak's whole point. He's like, you know, it wasn't that these guys were eating pork and keeping the Sabbath and worshiping, you know, nobody brought them up for having statues of Jesus in front of their church, right? that wasn't the discussion at the time, obviously, because if that had been the discussion at the time, I don't think Gamliel would have been like, oh, it's fine. They have like a crucifix that they're bowing towards, and like, no, I don't think that would have happened, right? I'm guessing you still think I don't know what you think. Like, did
I think they had iconography just like all the Jewish synagogues at the time. Yeah.
Do you think they had an icon of Jesus in front of the church that they were bowing to?
Out in front? No.
Thank
They're being
God.
persecuted. No, but I mean, you've seen first century synagogues, right? And second century synagogues.
Look,
it's iconography of biblical scenes and figures all over the place.
I have no problems with like like
I'm just saying Christians did the same thing, including with Jesus and the apostles. And,
but like ultimately, I mean, an iconostasis, like did they have an iconostasis up front? I don't think so. Right?
Well, I mean, we get there pretty quickly, but yeah.
And so it's like, so my problems with Christianity have very little to do with if you believe that Jesus will be the Messiah like we believe a Messiah will be, but like Pantocrator.
Okay, but folks, people who believed that Bar Kokhba was the Messiah, didn't go on to turn millions of people in nations away from idolatry.
Okay.
And away from sexual immorality.
Okay.
So it seems to me that the people who claim Jesus is the Jewish Messiah,
right?
That's a fundamental difference between them and all these other groups.
Right?
I mean,
I don't see a fundamental difference between them and Muslims who also believe.
I was going to say, who do Muslims say is the Jewish Messiah?
And honestly, I mean, this is part of when I seriously started considering the possibility of Jesus as Mashiach ben Yosef. It's like, hey, I could get behind that idea.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's fun. I know I'm not going to convince you to like accept this, right?
Yeah.
But at least not right now. But but it is at least a different, in that respect, it is a different claim than those other claims. There has been a different historical fruit of it
than Bar Kokhba, definitely. Than Bar Kokhba, definitely.
Yeah.
I mean, could you? The fact is, ultimately, it goes back to my favorite image here, right? Which is like Jesus is the king of everybody but the Jews, right? Like he is the Messiah. He is the savior of the Gentiles, which I'm glad the Gentiles have a savior. Like, right? Jonah, I think did a good thing. That's why we're pretty big on Jonah. We like Jonah. Book of Jonah is one of my favorites. At the same time, like I don't see how that equates to Mashiach ben David. Mashiach ben Yosef, I could give you all day long.
Yeah. Well, that's what we've talked about before. I know I asked you at one point early on if you thought it was possible that Jesus is Messiah ben Joseph now, it could end up at what we call
that's the thing for
his
me.
Glorious
like,
appearing, end up being Ben David.
That's why I never even considered it, was because Christians are so hung up on the idea of Jesus being Mashiach ben David. And I don't know, Stephen, if you've heard this distinction. There's various Jewish messiahs, but
I've listened to plenty of your live streams.
Oh, okay. So yeah, you've been in the comments several times. But like if he is Mashiach ben Yosef, then that totally like it's a complete disqualification for Moshiach ben David, right? Because if it's the same person, you end up no longer with four craftsmen. You end up like you're collapsing things together, which makes zero sense to me at all. Like this is you've heard me talk about that theological crime scene, which talks about he's the high priest and he's this and he's that and he's the other thing, and it's like,
oh well, that's
yeah.
We need to go through Hebrews sometime. Hebrews makes sense, but I don't blame you the way it's translated and stuff. I don't blame you for it.
Well, I mean, look, if you get the rest of the Christians to retranslate everything your way, I think we would be a lot less farther apart.
All to stop being Protestants, and that's the whole thing. That's the whole game.
I'm not sure the Catholics are so 100% with you on everything.
Nah, but they're
closer.
First of all, at the top, they're completely loosey-goosey now. You say a few nice things about the Pope, and they'll believe anything you tell them. Like the Catholic Church has become a weird thing. Right? They honestly don't care about their doctrine all that much. And they care a lot more about the institution and preserving the integrity of the institution and growing the institution. And they're willing to wobble all over the place on the doctrine.
Mm-hmm.
That's why the people who are sticklers about doctrine in the Roman Catholic Church, like Bishop Strickland over in Texas, are getting kicked out.
Mm. Well, I mean, Father Eric is pretty traditional.
Yeah, but I managed to get him to reject the language of Florence on a live stream. You were there for it. And agree to the monarchic trinity. Like no.
I've been
give me a couple more hours. I'll have him toss the filioque out the door. Like that's what I'm saying. You can work.
No. Father Stephen, I have been working on him with that for years.
Yeah.
I got him to like say he agrees with the monarchical trinity like many years ago.
Yeah.
This has been my mission. So like you're somebody's been talking that up.
This is what I mean. This is what I mean. If all the Protestants become Orthodox, then we can go talk to the Catholics and we can work things out with them.
All right. My wife is home. I had to get.
Have fun.
Appreciate you all.
Thank you for joining.
We just got to clear some of these distractions and confusions off the table first, and then we can get down to business.
We'll get rid of the Protestants, then we'll get rid of the Oriental Orthodox, and then we'll be fine with
the Oriental Orthodox are easy. They want to get back together. They want to. They're motivated buyers. We can make that happen too.
Well, apparently a lot of the OO end up in Catholic universities for their training.
Yeah, there are also a lot of them in Orthodox seminaries, though.
Okay.
Before they become priests.
Didn't the Pope of the Copts end up like going to a Catholic college or something? Who is it? Pope Tadros right now?
Mm-hmm. I think you're thinking of Shenouda.
I may be thinking of Shenouda. Wouldn't know.
Super random question. As
you open a book to a random page.
I've got dog ears. You mentioned that the Davidic kingship arises from Judah because of the sins of the three older brothers. I don't know. I don't know my Bible very well. Could you just expand on that more?
Reuben was the firstborn. He did a very naughty thing.
Yeah.
He lost his inheritance. Simeon was the secondborn. He did a very naughty thing. That was it. Levi was a little complicit in the naughty thing, but also was going to get the priesthood. So he did not get the kingship. Up next is Judah.
That's basically the story. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the Cliff's Notes. Yeah.
Do I have anything else? So I've heard that St. John the Baptist was a Kohen and like a Nazarite, and that these two have conflicting obligations, and that's what led him to do his weird Samuel stuff.
Samuel stuff. There's more Elijah stuff, but
Elijah stuff. All right. Does that have any grounding? Like, is there conflicts between Cohen stuff and Nazarite stuff, or no?
well, I mean, Nazarite vows did kind of make you unclean, and that's why you had to do sin offerings and stuff at the end of them. So I imagine it would have been frowned upon for
A Cohen to be a Nazarite?
to take a Nazarite vow.
I don't know. Chazi, do you know anything about
Wouldn't it exclude them from
Nazarite?
serving for the duration of the vow?
Probably. That makes sense.
But St. John was kind of a special case because he wasn't like an adult who took a vow for a period of time. He was a Nazarite from birth, like Samson, except like the opposite of Samson. That's in terms of actually keeping it. And he was kind of deprived of the priesthood by the murder of his father. I don't think that ended up being a real conflict for him in terms of the practicality of it. So you're supposed to in that story make a connection between Herod and Ahab, sort of parallel to the connection between St. John the Forerunner and Elijah. Herod gets compared to all the cool people. Pharaoh? Yeah, Pharaoh, Ahab.
Oh.
all the great kings of the
Bilam?
Hebrew Bible.
It's funny, like in rabbinic literature, Bilam is considered like the epitome of the worst, but I don't think Christians have that view of Bilam.
Son of Beor?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, that's in like check out 2 Peter. Yeah. Because the whole thing of at Baal Peor.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's in the New Testament, a few places.
Revelation 2:14. Apparently.
Yeah, I think there's
teaching of Balaam, who taught Balak to cast a stumbling block before the children of Israel, to eat things sacrificed to idols, and to commit fornication.
It's all 2 Peter 2:15 is what I was thinking of.
And 1 Jude 11, apparently.
Yeah, Jude 11. Yeah. Jude is all one chapter. So.
Interesting.
So yeah, he does show up in that negative context. And there is a place, I mentioned this on an episode of Lord of Spirits, and I thought this was going to be the big spicy take that everybody was going to freak out about. That there's a place where Jesus basically calls Herod what we would call a gay slur.
Oh, right. You mentioned that, yeah.
Yeah. And like, nobody reacted. I was like, okay, cool, I guess.
I I don't think your audience is the type to
Maybe not. I guess they're just
Yeah.
like, well, yeah, of course he did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know what good there is. I can't think of anyone who has anything good to say about Herod, frankly. Like in the ancient world.
Yeah.
I mean, Herod the Great, Cleopatra even turned him down, and she slept with everybody. Like,
I don't know that much about Cleopatra, but I believe you.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the Talmud refers to him as a dog. Yeah, as Kaiser's dog, Caesar's dog. Yeah, something like that.
Well, I mean, basically, yeah. That was.
Father Stephen's audience would definitely hear that and say based.
Well, I was proclaimed by somebody on Twitter to be one of the leaders of the right wing. So for the whole nation.
Trey, you got a haircut. How dare you?
I did. I had a question for you, Father Stephen. Have you been to Mount Athos?
We asked
You
that.
already covered this.
No, I didn't see that part of the stream. No? Oh, okay. Thank you.
You asked that, and we asked Father Stephen, and we spent a long time discussing it. Yeah, you're wasting our valuable time, Trey. We stay on the subject here, and
like I'm about to leave, and you're wasting the last few minutes I'm on this stream.
Yeah,
with this nonsense.
Then I do have a way more important question. What is your favorite World of Warcraft expansion?
Wrath of the Lich King.
Okay, good choice.
And anyone who says otherwise is objectively wrong.
I don't think I played that. Might have been after. Yeah. What level did you get up to on? What was the level cap for Wrath of the Lich King?
80.
Yeah, I only played up to 70s. Yeah.
Yeah, that was Burning Crusade.
Burning Crusade, that was it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Wrath of the Lich King was the peak of subscribers. It was the peak of
at one point I had 370s. A paladin, a priest, and a warrior.
Oh, it is sinful and depressing the amount of time I spent playing that game. Like my main, if you hit /played on my main, it's more than a year.
Oh yeah.
It's more than 365 days played.
Yeah.
Like a year of my life.
Yeah.
I'm glad I met my wife on World of Warcraft, because if I hadn't, there would be no way to justify that.
Well, I guess I'm just gonna be burning for all that time.
Spending a year of my life playing Miscellaneous, but I met my wife there. So.
Yon God says we are amateurs. Yon God, you're too young to call us amateurs. What are you, like early 30s?
Yeah, there's young people here. Why are you here not playing Marvel Rivals?
Marvel Rivals?
You talking to me?
Probably out-leveled all of you.
Huh?
I actually started playing whatchamacallit recently. What's the name of that game? Elder Scrolls Online. I should stop.
My wife plays that on and off. But no, Marvel Rivals is an absolute Overwatch clone, the original Overwatch. But it's like the original Overwatch. So like as soon as it came out, it's free to play. All the characters are free to play. The second it came out a couple of weeks ago, like the Overwatch 2 servers hit their record low, like on Steam and everything. Because everyone has moved over to playing Marvel Rivals now.
What kind of game is it?
6v6 arena.
Ew.
A la Overwatch. Yeah.
I hate PvP.
I am a Moon Knight main.
Moon Knight? Okay.
Yeah. At least until they release the Fantastic Four, then I'll probably pick one of them.
I don't PvP at all. I'm surprised you PvP.
Oh, this is good. So Overwatch I used to play with my nephew and my wife. So 3 out of the 6 people. So you could get somebody to pocket heal and like it's not just all randos. Which could be frustrating because it's the same kind of maps as Overwatch, so it requires actual teamwork, like escort or like capturing a position.
I saw Elon talk about Path of Exiles, and I thought about joining, and I'm like, I doubt it has much PvE and crafting. And if it doesn't have PvE and crafting, why am I bothering?
It's probably woke. All the new games are woke now.
That's why they're so good.
Is this that speaking in tongues I've heard so much about?
I find the whole all games are woke now thing so tiring. Like I really do. But I have to say the new Dragon Age game is horrible, and it's horrible precisely because it's woke. I like
Dragon Age.
It almost pains me
for
to
a
say
long
that.
time.
No. You don't understand. You don't understand.
There are 0 pretty women, are there? Right?
They're like, it's not. It has nothing to do with that.
Oh, okay.
It's the character creation has this panoply of genders.
It's always that.
No. It's beyond.
Okay.
It's more horrible than you could possibly imagine.
Okay.
It makes Dragon Age Inquisition look like Knights of the Old Republic. Like that's how like ridiculously woke it is. Like, and I don't even want to say that. I don't even want to hear those words coming out of my mouth. This game stinks because it's woke, but it's actually true in this case. Like, just awful.
Well, I mean, wasn't the whole point of Gamergate the fact that they were like no naked women? Like, wasn't that the entire reason the gamers revolted? Was like, we must have pretty tunes.
I thought it was that Lara Croft had to have polygons for breasts. I don't know. I wasn't around for it, but yeah, to me, just labeling things woke seems like pretty lame mode of critique. But
that's pretty woke of you.
But in the case of Dragon Age, it's just like the perfect summary word for everything wrong with it. The new one, but
Gamergate was supposedly about journalistic corruption, but we all know it was about the tunes being not sexy enough. Like that was the
according to your claim. There is that new trailer for what's that game that just got released today, and instantly where some female character shaves her head in the trailer, and so instantly everybody's like woke, bad. She shaved her head, woke, terrible.
I personally like women with long hair. I don't know.
Don't even have to play the game. Don't need to know what it's about. I just know a woman shaved her head, and therefore.
Chezi is just so religious. He's like, why aren't you talking about Vayishlach?
Yeah, like maybe the woman shaved her head because she was taken in battle with a foreign nation. And now she's marrying an Israelite.
There you go.
See, we tied it right back to the Torah.
Torah. There you go. Yeah.
And that's not woke at all. See?
See? There we go. There we go. Yeah.
I actually do have a Torah question. If we want to shift it, what is the relation to reason and the scriptures in the Orthodox tradition? Like, what what is the wackiest and most fundamentalist, like what's the range of interpretation available to an Orthodox person? Does that make sense? Like,
I think he's asking how much do you agree, like, in terms of fundamentalist versus Luther's reason is Satan's mistress. Like, what exactly?
yeah. That's what I'm saying.
Well, you read the scriptures within the Orthodox tradition of reading the scriptures. Like, I mean, like, if Jacob, if he asked you that about Judaism, what would you say? Like, you read it within the tradition of the rabbis. I read it within the tradition of like the church fathers and
Well, okay, so
the church and how it's been read traditionally, right? Like,
so
you don't just read it by yourself and come to your own conclusions.
like, yes and no. I mean, there are rationalists and there are mystics, and there are very few things that, as long as you stay, like, Judaism is more about orthopraxy than orthodoxy. We're very big in on that.
So is Orthodox Christianity, frankly, especially worship.
Yeah. As long as, I mean, when it comes down to, I think what prevents Judaism from splintering is this idea of a minyan, of you have to have at least 10 people in order to have a congregation, 10 adult males to have a congregation.
So you have to have at least 12 opinions on any given.
As long as you can have a synagogue, right? As long as you can have a synagogue, and that synagogue is operating by some very basic rules, there's a huge spectrum within Orthodox Judaism. There really is. I mean,
but is it more like in Orthodox Christianity, it's less like, well, here's a bunch of conflicting opinions that disagree with each other, and more like, here's a bunch of layers, right? And different contexts and different ways of understanding this, where we don't have to say that, we don't have to pick one and say, oh, this is the true one, and all the other ones are wrong.
So Kalonymus actually brings up an important point. Orthodox Judaism is younger than Reform Judaism because the term Orthodox Judaism was actually Rabbi Shimshon Raphael Hirsch came up with it in reaction to Reform Jews.
No. Before that, you just had Judaism.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah.
Right. And like, we're pretty loosey-goosey. We really are. Right. The level of disagreements is huge. Right. So, like, yeah, Shabbos and Kashrus, I mean, look, 100 years ago, there was a real disagreement about whether or not you could use microphones on the Sabbath, right? People forget about that these days because everybody's pretty much gone one way. But there were Orthodox synagogues that were using microphones 100 years ago.
But that's not strictly speaking biblical interpretation. It involves it. It involves interpreting the Torah in a certain way. But
I mean,
I don't think that's what Trey's asking about.
What matters is how you live your life, not whether or not, you know, you believe Abraham was a actual human person or a legendary human person. Like, that's just not an important part of Judaism. It really isn't.
Yeah. I think the same thing's true with Orthodox Christianity. Although, if somebody comes along and starts questioning things like that, they are someone to be watched closely, because it's sort of like, why? Right?
Yeah.
Like, why are you doing this? You know.
Look, Rabbi Yitzchak, who's still the official rabbi of my Discord, he believes the Zohar is a forgery, and he's very loud about it. Like, he's not going to be named the rabbi of any synagogue that I know of. But he's still an Orthodox Jew, and nobody's going to kick him out of their synagogue for believing that obviously heretical opinion.
Right, but if he said the Torah was a forgery, that would be a whole different story.
Yes. But if he said that Daniel was a forgery, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, no, I think in Orthodox Christianity, if there was somebody who said, the book of Revelation,
Okay, Colonimus, funny
I don't think
enough,
he'd get kicked out for it.
You're the second Orthodox Jew to call me out on this. And the previous person, I asked him to ask a Rav. and he asked Rabbi Breidowitz, according to the 13 principles of Maimonides, would a person be okay to believe that Abraham was not an actual person? And Rabbi Breidowitz said, Lefi aniyat da'ati, that would still be within the 13 principles. Not that anybody here, chas v'shalom, believes that Abraham wasn't an actual human being. I am not in any way endorsing this clearly heretical opinion. I am just saying that such a person would still be an Orthodox Jew.
Yeah. Well, no, and there's being wrong about things, and then we would say the same thing. There's things you could be wrong about, and then there's things that if you're wrong about them, that puts you outside the church.
Right. And just to be clear, Gideon, this is a huge thing. Yes, conservatives started talking about the Exodus never happening. David Wolpe, who's Trey's favorite rabbi here in Los Angeles, said that out loud, and it made the front page of the Los Angeles Times and the New York Times. And every rabbi in Los Angeles was Orthodox rabbi was screaming bloody murder. That is a whole other thing. To say that the Exodus itself never happened, like you're going way too far.
Yeah. The reason I was laughing is because the last time the same question about Abraham came up, Father Stephen was on, and he was asking you about that. So.
Father Stephen was asking me about that?
Father Stephen was talking about that because you brought up the whole like Jesus mythicism point, and then Father Stephen was like, there's some academics who think that it was just an uprising, and you're like, well, it is possible that an Orthodox Jew could believe that and be fine, and then
that the Exodus from Egypt was a sort of
the conquest. The conquest.
Oh, the conquest
Joshua.
Was okay. Like, look, once you're getting, I mean, this actually goes back to something Father Stephen and I have been talking about, which is like, if somebody, somebody said, Jacob gets all worked up over the idea that the Torah was given by angels, but if you say the Torah was given by extraterrestrials, he doesn't care so much, right? And what I think is really important in this context, there are people who will say to me, obviously God couldn't have completely shown himself, right? And therefore, something like aliens or angels need to happen. And for that person, it's them rationalizing the Torah in a way which, while I may disagree with it, I think is they mean well, right? And that's how I view the Jubilee, the Book of Jubilees.
Yeah.
saying,
That
"Oh,
Second Temple
it was
idea.
given."
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Greek idea that obviously God couldn't possibly care about the world, and therefore he had to use messengers and whatever. That is very different to me in character from someone who says, "Oh, the Torah was just ordained by angels, and now we have a higher revelation that comes directly from God." And it's like, oh, hold on here.
The New Testament doesn't say that, but yeah. But like I said before I came on, right? Like being a Christian is not like being a woman. You can't just identify as one, and that makes you one.
Right. And I mean, so Colonimus says, I mean, if you read too much into the Rambam, the only thing off limits is Mount Sinai. And it, like, we're very, very not focused on trying to define people as heretics, which I think generally people shouldn't be.
Right. Well, the place this comes up in the Orthodox Church, for example, is with Protestants who are coming into the Orthodox Church. And for example, we have a feast of the Dormition of the Theotokos when she died, right? Mary died. And we believe that after her death, her body was taken up into heaven, same as Moses's, right? So this is part of our tradition. But unlike in the Roman Catholic Church where they have the Assumption of Mary, right? That's a dogma. They say that's a dogma, and if you don't believe it, you go to hell. Right? It's a de fide dogma. And so we will say, well, yeah, we believe that happened, but we don't believe it's a dogma. We don't say, oh, you have to believe that, right? Or
hold on. So you guys do believe in the Assumption of Mary or no?
We believe in a version of it, yes. We believe that after she died, her body was taken up into heaven.
And the Catholics believe she was taken up before she died.
In their statement, they say it could have been before or after because they're trying to include our Eastern traditions.
Okay.
Right. But their iconography shows her sort of ascending the way Jesus did. But they say that's a dogma. You have to believe that. And we say, well, no, it's not a dogma. And so a lot of Protestants who come into the Orthodox Church don't understand what that means. Right? Because they're like, oh, so you're saying I can reject that and that's fine? Like I can just not believe that happened and it's fine? And we're like, well, no, you shouldn't like reject that. That's part of our tradition. And they're like, but you just said I don't have to. Like, and I'm like, well, no, we don't believe that's going to like cause you to go to hell or something if you don't believe it. But like, why wouldn't you believe it? Like, why would that be the place where you pump the brakes? And so I imagine it's the same kind of thing. Like if somebody's going to say Abraham never existed, like, well, okay, technically you don't have to believe that, but like, why would you not believe that? Right? Like, why would, like, there's like this weird minimalism of like, I want to believe the minimum number of things that I absolutely have to. And then I can be skeptical about everything else for some reason. Which seems like a weird religious attitude.
Which, I mean, honestly really gets into how people look askance at anybody who's still questioning the Zohar. Like, okay, you're sitting there, you as yourself, questioning the Zohar like 500 years after basically all of the great Jewish scholars that everyone accepts was like, no, this is the actual valid revelation of what existed thousands of years ago.
Yeah, it's just sort of, well, I mean, technically you don't have to, but why wouldn't you? You know,
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it's a serious question if somebody doesn't believe in the Zohar, like if they write a mezuzah, if it's a kosher mezuzah or not. Yeah.
Yeah. But so, yeah, when you get a question phrase, "Do I have to believe X?" It's always like what? I mean, have to? What?
Yeah. Okay, Father Stephen, you should be going to bed.
I'm going to.
You have church tomorrow morning. I have stuff I have to do.
Got a church of baby. Mother.
I'm going to confuse people by actually doing the
playing the outro with me.
Yeah. I'm going to use host's prerogative to put the Reverend Parcells to bed because he does need to get up in the morning.
Sorry, Reverend. Thank you.
But before he goes, I have a question. Let's say, God forbid, that I were to burn somebody at the stake for not being a Trinitarian. And I did not repent of that. Is that a salvation issue?
Sometimes Jacob takes that devil's advocate thing too far.
There a proverb that says something like, "Don't answer a fool according to his folly."
But there's a proverb that says, "Answer a fool according to his folly."
There is.
Exactly right. And I'm going to leave it to you guys to determine, which of those was applicable in this situation as I go. So, but anyhow, good.
Thank you, Reverend.
Good to
Thank
chat
you.
with you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
Yeah. The